Chapter 529. A very strange guy. Water-breaking arrow was with him. He said something about Qianli breaking the balance of the game and should be harmonized. Sword Demon couldn't wait to explain the situation as he arranged a meeting point with everyone. Ah. I agree. With just one sentence, Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle had already lost their stance. Sword Demon deeply understood that Guy's words about, most people would agree with his opinion, weren't false. There were too many people in this world who would say that the grapes were sour when they couldn't eat it. Jealousy was also part of human nature. And then, Han family young master didn't pay attention to the two guys' interruptions. Then I argued with him. We couldn't come to an agreement and in the end, they fought. Sword Demon said. The problem is, if he wants to harmonize with Qianli, he should look for Qianli. Why would he look for you? Han family young master said. He thinks that I've benefited a lot from Qianli's strength. If I can't stand on his side, then I should be the one harmonizing with him. Sword Demon said. Damn, who is this guy? God has descended on earth? Everyone was shocked. I don't know him. Sword Demon said, he's a level 36 cleric. Cleric? There's no reason for Qianli to offend a cleric. Han family young master was startled. Everyone else knew what this meant. Gu Fei's diligent pursuit would definitely attract a lot of hate, but the cleric profession basically had nothing to do with PK value. Even if Gu Fei wanted tens of thousands of people, there might not be a cleric among them. As for the occasional cleric who died under his sword, most of them happened in a chaotic battle. In this kind of situation, what kind of realm and breadth of mind would be needed to plan this as a personal grudge? I'm also very puzzled, it's inexplicable. Sword Demon said. Look at him saying that he wants to reconcile with Qianli. He even wants to reconcile with the Sword Demon who has benefited from Qianli. Using this kind of banner, it doesn't seem like he has a personal grudge. Brother, you said. You can't speculate with common sense, said the Han family young master. Why? Brother, you asked. According to my preliminary judgment, this person is most likely a psychopath. Han family young master said. Are you serious? Brother, you was speechless. With my intelligence, I think this is the most reasonable explanation. Do you still have any questions? Han family young master said. Speaking of which, if they want to destroy the balance, they should come to me. Why would they come to Qianli? The Han family young master muttered. You can just say this kind of words silently, don't send it to the channel to insult our eyes. Everyone couldn't stand it anymore, and the next result was that they were quickly banned from speaking in the channel. As the leader, the Han family young master had the authority to control the mercenary group's channel. Everyone burst into tears. Unable to send messages, they could only bury their heads and hurry. Sword Demon still had something to remind them, but the channel was banned, so he could only private message them one by one. Be careful, they will find me, and maybe they will find you guys too. The moment they received this message, they all looked back at the same time. It was chilly, and they couldn't help but quicken their pace. At the tavern, Sword Demon arrived first, followed by Brother Yu, Unscathed in Battle, and Han family young master. After waiting for another half an hour, Yutian Shinming arrived. Originally, he was with Unscathed in Battle, but after 2 days, he thought he was already very familiar with Forest Shade City, so he began to act alone. As a result, now that he was asked to come to a designated area, it took him 15 minutes longer than the others. But looking at the way he walked in, it seemed like he had completed an amazing feat, and his face was full of satisfaction. Everyone just arrived, right? Yutian Shinming really thought he came quite fast. Everyone was speechless. Okay, Sword Demon, tell us the situation in detail. Brother, you couldn't wait to prepare his notebook. The situation is that you have been surrounded. Suddenly someone at the table interrupted and answered. The 5 people were shocked and looked around. Sure enough, many players at the table had already stood up and looked at them. After the person at the table took off his mask, Sword Demon immediately recognized him. It's you. The guy sitting at the table of Sword Demon and the others was actually the priest in the woods just now. Cloud City's champion mercenary group doesn't seem to be very efficient. Does it take so long for 5 people to gather? Yi Xiaowu said. The 5 people were a little confused for a moment. How did they get surrounded for no reason? In the mercenary channel, Han family young master sent a message and asked, someone was followed when they came over? Everyone quickly responded. System reply, blocking. Everyone was about to go crazy when Han family young master said again, the ban has been lifted. I believe this Sword Demon has roughly told you what happened. We came here to confirm your attitude towards Qianli's drunkenness that broke the balance, Yi Xiaowu said. What's the situation? Everyone was discussing nervously in the channel. There's no reason for him to know that we were gathering here in advance. He must have followed one of us and was led here. Han family young master said, it's easy to ambush these people now. No one will pay too much attention to going in and out of the tavern. This guy covered his face and sat next to us without us noticing. It's not surprising that he covered his face now, Sword Demon said. Before this, we only saw him in a hurry. We really couldn't recognize him with his face covered. This guy even deliberately changed his equipment. The clothing styles in the game were considered monotonous. It would be strange if no one wore the same clothes as you on the street. Even if Yi Xiaowu wore the same priest outfit as before and sat next to them, he might not be able to alert Sword Demon, let alone now that he had changed his clothes. What do we do now? Can we fight our way out? Brother Yu asked. He didn't have much combat experience. His judgment of the current situation couldn't compare to the others. The tavern space is limited. Having more people doesn't necessarily mean we have the upper hand. I'm afraid there are people outside, unscathed in battle said. No matter what, let's fight our way out first. Yutian Shinming had just arrived and hadn't even warmed his seat yet. Hey, you guys, are you listening to me? Yi Xiaowu saw that they were looking around but didn't say anything. Obviously, they were using the channel to chat privately. His previous question was actually ignored by them. Gather at the right door. I don't need to teach you how to cooperate, right? Wait for my instructions, Han family young master said. His eyes finally turned to Yi Xiaowu. What do you want to say? I want to hear your opinions on balance, Yi Xiaowu said. Balance? Is there such a thing in the world? Han family young master asked everyone. Everyone hurriedly cooperated and said in unison, no. That's right. Han family young master looked back at Yi Xiaowu. I'm so handsome and you're so ugly. Tell me where the balance is. Brother Yu and the other 2 wiped their sweat while peeking at Sword Demon. So, Sword Demon wouldn't mind? After all, Sword Demon's ugliness was also a very sensitive fact. Although the cleric in front of them wasn't gorgeous, he wasn't ugly either. It sounded like Han family young master was targeting Sword Demon. However, Sword Demon didn't show any emotion at all, and Yi Xiaowu didn't seem to care either. He smiled and said, so, you also think that Qianli is a reasonable existence when he gets drunk? Of course, Han family young master said and added, I'm the unreasonable existence. Ah, don't talk to him anymore. Let's kill our way out. The other people in the channel had already gone crazy. Yi Xiaowu shook his head. His eyes skipped over Han family young master and fell on the other 3 people. Then, what about you guys? I don't know why you're so sure that Qianli is an unreasonable existence. If it's because of his kung fu and his skills, he's not the only one in the game. Take water-breaking arrow beside you for example. Isn't it the same? The one who answered him was Brother Yu. Yi Xiaowu said, of course, balance doesn't mean that they have to be absolutely evenly matched. It's like a scale. If there's a slight shake from left to right, it will eventually return to a balanced state. However, if there's too much weight on one side, the whole scale will be overturned. This is the real destruction of balance. So you think that Qianli is this heavyweight? Brother Yu asked. Yes. Okay, got it. Brother Yu nodded. So what's your opinion? Yi Xiaowu asked. I don't have an opinion. I just want to know. You continue. Brother Yu didn't plan to pay attention to Yi Xiaowu anymore. He calmly waited for Han family young master's order to kill. Then, what about you two? Yi Xiaowu looked at Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming. Talking about these big theories is a headache and disgusting. Unscathed in Battle said. Yeah, we don't care about these things. In short, if we hang out with Qianli, we'll get good equipment. Yutian Shinming picked up his feet and put them on the table. He showed his boots to Yi Xiaowu. This pair of yours isn't. You exchanged it with the waist dance boots. Sword Demon reminded Yutian Shinming that his pair wasn't the wind-chasing boots. I got it. Yutian Shinming retracted his feet. Plus, there's a girl hitting on you. Unscathed in Battle said. Yutian Shinming immediately thought of the voices and smiles of a bunch of girls in Reborn Amethyst. He couldn't help but let out a wretched chuckle. Hee, if it's just for some benefits, I think I can help you guys too. And it's something you guys can't imagine. Qianli can't get even if he gets drunk. Yi Xiaowu said. Sword Demon suddenly became a bit nervous. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle didn't look like unwavering people. As expected, Unscathed in Battle's eyes lit up. That sounds good. What benefits? For example, what kind of equipment or skills you guys want to get? I can tell you the way. Compared to the information I know, Brother Yu, what you know is just the tip of the iceberg. Yi Xiaowu said confidently. If that's the case. Unscathed in Battle looked like he was very tempted. But there's still a very important problem. Yutian Shinming said, we're not familiar with you. Yes, not familiar. Unscathed in Battle said, I think Qianli is more familiar. Of course, it's easier to get things done if you're familiar. Let's just play with Qianli. Yutian Shinming said. These two guys. Sword Demon didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. If that's the case, then goodbye, priest who likes to play with scales. Han family young master stood up. Chapter 530. The Han family young master stood up and said, goodbye, which was undoubtedly a signal. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhan Wushang's butt was practically glued to the bench as he charged out. He didn't care whether he was crashing into an enemy or not. In any case, with his ferocity, he charged straight to the door and cleared a path of blood. His ferocious behavior would undoubtedly attract most of the enemy's attention. In technical terms, the enemy's aggro was all on Unscathed in Battle. The Han family young master raised his hand and cast a healing spell, following closely. The Sword Demon and Brother Yu were on the left and right, and Yutian Shinming was at the back. He shot an arrow backhandedly, but it was flying toward Yi Xiaowu. Although Yi Xiaowu was only a low-level cleric, his reaction was not slow. Coupled with his unparalleled familiarity with the game, he seemed to have anticipated this arrow. When Yutian Shinming released the bowstring, Yi Xiaowu was already under the table. This was completely out of Imperial Sky Shinming's expectations. How could such a cocky guy be so unsightly when it came to actual combat? Trash. Yutian Shinming threw down a very disdainful sentence and had already rushed out of the tavern with the other four. The whole process took less than 5 seconds. It was unexpectedly smooth. My charge is too fierce, thought Unscathed in Battle. It's all thanks to me that we can get out. Their teamwork is so good. There are no mistakes at all. Brother Yu also praised. As a person who was not outstanding at all, but in a team where everyone was outstanding, he liked to emphasize the team's contribution. There is no ambush outside. The Sword Demon was relieved. He had just dropped a level. How could it be possible that he didn't feel bad at all? However, there were priorities. It wasn't the time to feel heartache just now. Right now, he was trying to escape from the encirclement. His goal was to escape from losing a level. This time, he succeeded. However, he had already lost a level before, so he was both happy and sad at the same time. Of course, it wasn't over after they left the tavern. The group continued to run, and they purposely chose to run through complicated alleys. Naturally, they had to take care of some of their comrades who were slower. If they didn't play hide and seek, it would be difficult to ensure that they could escape. Trash trash trash. Ha 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 ha. Yutian Shinming caught up from behind while laughing and scolding like a lunatic. At this point, he was already 500 meters away from the tavern. He had already changed 3 alleys. He had been in this state the entire time. What's wrong? Everyone couldn't help but ask. That trash, I scared him under the table with 1 arrow. Yutian Shinming was proud of himself. Is that so? The Han family young master suddenly stopped in his tracks. Hurry up and go. Brother Yu grabbed him and looked around nervously. His speed wasn't fast, and with his cautious mentality, Brother Yu wouldn't feel at ease until they ran for 5 kilometers. Don't panic. Han family young master waved his hand. Is there anyone chasing us? I don't see anyone. Everyone shook their heads. They only cared about running. Once they got out of the tavern, they went around the alleys. Occasionally, they would look back but didn't see anyone. They all felt that they had successfully escaped. Something's wrong. Han family young master said and waved his hand. Yutian, go back and take a look. Thus, Yutian Shinming turned his head to take a look and turned back. There's no one. Fuck. Everyone gave him the middle finger. You're sending me to my death. Imperial Sky Divine Ming said with a sullen face. Although they were usually called experts, only experts like Gu Fei could fight a group alone. They were all experts, but Gu Fei was an extraterrestrial and belonged to the Scions. Yutian Shinming thought that he was an earthling and didn't want to be compared with the Scions. Isn't this breakthrough a little too easy? The Han family young master said. It's all thanks to my charge. Amazing. Unscathed in battle gave himself a thumbs up. Good teamwork. Brother Yu also praised. There's no ambush outside the door. Sword Demon said. Boss was intimidated by me. Yutian Shinming said. The 4 finally said what they were holding back in their hearts. Han family young master gave them the middle finger in disdain. Could it be that you think they're going easy on us? Brother Yu said. Thinking of that guy's godlike bragging, he doesn't look like someone who would hide under the table. Han family young master said. What else can I do? My peerless arrow. Yutian Shinming boasted again, but his words were reasonable. At that distance, without Gu Fei's scion skills, he could only take advantage of the pub's terrain and hide under the table. Although Yi Xiao's actions were unstylish, it was reasonable and effective. He just randomly found a heavy armored warrior to block in front of him and you shot. Han family young master said. That arrow of mine that came out of nowhere. Sudden my ass. Even a level 36 cleric has the time to hide under the table. How could it be sudden? Han family young master interrupted. That guy already expected Yutian Shinming's arrow, but didn't take any precautions. In the end, he dodged in such a sorry state. That's what you mean, right? Brother Yu concluded. Han family young master nodded his head. What does this mean? It means that those guys who thought they were his subordinates were just pretending. Han family young master said. What do you mean? Yutian Shinming didn't understand. Brother, this drink is on me. Take the red packet and do me a favor. When you hear me speak, stand up and look at that table. Han family young master patted Yutian Shinming and said. The other 4 looked at each other. Buying drinks and giving red packets was just an example given by Han family young master. Everyone understood what he meant. The cleric just randomly found a few people to make them think that they were surrounded. In fact, they were just a group of background characters. Besides standing up and staring, they wouldn't do anything else. No wonder it went so smoothly. Sword Demon thought back carefully. During the process of their escape, they really didn't see any players who stood up to stop them. If they really planned it beforehand and decided to stop us, even if we could escape, we wouldn't come out unscathed. Unscathed in battle said. After all, experts still had awareness. And, it seems like there are really no pursuers. Brother, you said. They had been standing here talking for a long time, but there really wasn't even a shadow behind them. It really wasn't that easy to get rid of them. Good boy, even I was fooled. Han family young master sneered. Why did he do that? The others were confused. If you guys weren't in such a situation, would you guys sit there and listen to him? Han family young master said. Everyone came to a realization. Indeed, if they weren't in such a situation, who would have the patience to deal with him one by one? If they saw that he was an enemy who had just killed Sword Demon, they would just go up and kill him. They could talk later. Yi Xiaowu also said the same thing to Broken Arrow in the tavern. Alright, let's leave. Those guys are all experienced veterans, I'm afraid they'll soon notice that there's a problem. Yi Xiaowu said to Broken Arrow. Okay. Broken Arrow nodded in response. Not long after the people from Child Elite Group left the tavern, the two also left in a hurry. These people all have this kind of attitude. This Qianli is really good at making friends when he's drunk. Yi Xiaowu sighed. He's a good person. Although he's passionate about PK, most of it is through the channels of wanted missions. Broken Arrow said. I know. Yi Xiaowu nodded, but unreasonable is still unreasonable. Since I can't get rid of him directly, I can only become his opponent to restrict him. Although his friends aren't on the same level as him, it's still very difficult to fight them head-on. Water Broken Arrow said. Yeah, so we also need some helpers. How are the people you're in charge of contacting? Yi Xiaowu said. Contacting them isn't hard, but these people don't have good reputations. Broken Arrow said. I know, we're only borrowing their strength to restrict Qianli. As for how they behave, we have no right to interfere, so we'll just ignore them for now. Yi Xiaowu said. But if we borrow their strength, they might obtain some unbalanced benefits in the process. If we let these people obtain the benefits, I feel that it won't be as good as those people just now. Water Broken Arrow said. Hee, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Yi Xiaowu laughed. Then what is the stone cave on the Cold Lake Jade Island that you told them about? Water Breaking Arrow asked. That? Just like you heard, it's a boss's lair. However, the Cold Lake is in the center of Thousand Year Forest. Thousand Year Forest is a high-leveling area, and the Cold Lake is surrounded by high-leveled monsters. It can be said that it's not a place that humans can pass through. In order to step onto the Emerald Island, you have to complete the necessary storyline quests. Once the world's storyline is activated, the distribution of monsters will change, and players will have a chance to step onto the island. Yi Xiaowu said. So you're saying that even if players know the coordinates of this place, they can't reach it no matter what? Broken Arrow said. That's right. The world's storyline should be pushed forward step by step. When Qianli was level 30, he had already started to push the world's storyline. Because of this, some of the quests in Moonlit Night City changed, and the difficulty of the quests increased. Many of the quests were impossible for current players to complete. Cloud City's guild quests also had an unexpected difficulty in Moonlit Night City. If it wasn't for Qianli's participation, it was very likely that he would have been stuck there. Yi Xiaowu said. So you're saying that the game's setting isn't perfect? Broken Arrow said. Yi Xiaowu nodded. That's right. We didn't expect that there would be such a strong player. Even if there was such a strong player, we didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence that he would touch the chain of level-breaking quests that would change the plot and structure of the game world so long in advance. We also didn't expect that he could complete the quests as high as 90%. His imbalance is not only because of his strength, but unfortunately, the crucial thing is that luck is on his side. I understand a bit. Broken Arrow nodded. In the past, I thought that as the player's level increased, he would naturally be restricted. But I didn't expect that as the level increased, he would become stronger and stronger. So, we need to take action. Yi Xiaowu said. Broken Arrow still nodded. Right now, we don't have the ability to directly fight against their team. Let's find a chance to split them up. Yi Xiaowu said. Yes, that thing has already been given to apple cider vinegar. Broken Arrow replied. Chapter 531. When the 5 people from Child Elite Group returned to the tavern, Yi Xiaowu and Broken Water Arrow were nowhere to be seen. They looked around. Although they couldn't remember what the people who had surrounded them looked like, their eyes betrayed them. After all, in terms of appearance, there were 2 people from Child Elite Group who were definitely not strangers. Without hesitation, Han Family Young Master picked a table at random and asked. The other party was obviously just doing things for benefits. They didn't have any benefits, and no one asked them to abide by any agreement. When the 5 people went up to ask, they immediately told them. Just as Han Family Young Master expected, these people were all found by the cleric on the street. However, these people didn't speak clearly, especially when it came to what benefits they had been given. Everyone avoided talking about it. They changed tables a few times, but they didn't get anything from this question. That guy's confidence doesn't look like he's faking it. The 5 people sat at another table and began to ponder. There's actually someone who knows more about the game than me. Brother Yu was shocked. He didn't think he was a top expert in actual combat, but in terms of knowledge, he had always been full of confidence. This confidence wasn't arrogance. Even if you randomly pulled a player from the street, as long as they had some experience in the game and said Brother Yu's name, they wouldn't doubt Brother Yu in this aspect. At most, they would laugh at his hobby. But today, there was such a person who said that what Brother Yu knew was just the tip of the iceberg, and he said it so confidently. The damage Brother Yu suffered wasn't any lighter than Sword Demon's loss of level. It was considered an internal injury. Seeing how these people are hiding and refusing to say anything, I'm afraid that the benefits given to them aren't easy to obtain. Sword Demon said, at least it's not alcohol or money. He made a similar promise to us. He didn't want us to stand on Qianli's side. Unscathed in Battle said. He also talked about balance again and again. Although players are concerned about this, his attitude and tone. Yutian Xinming also said. They were all people who had seen the world. The 5 of them looked at each other and said in unison, people from the game company? If it's someone from the game company, he can completely meet all of the above conditions. Sword Demon nodded. Brother Yu also let out a long sigh. If the other party was an internal member of the gaming company, then what he knew was only the tip of the iceberg. The parallel world was a very despicable game. The information provided by the developers was pitifully little, so every time the players discovered a new piece of equipment, a new quest, or a new skill, they would advertise it everywhere as if they had discovered the American continent. It was true that the game maintained a sense of novelty, but it lacked actual information about the future, which made the players' anticipation waning. Whether this was a good or bad thing had become a controversial issue. But, if he's from the game company, how could he appear in this form? Brother Yu was puzzled. Yeah, they probably couldn't apply for an account, right? Even if he had done something to enter the game, he should have done it sneakily. How could someone as arrogant as this guy be? Does he think we can't see that he's an internal member? Yutian Xinming said. Also, if he's really confident that he knows everything about the game, I'm afraid he's not at the normal level. I feel like he's at least at the chief planner level. Brother Yu said. But that might not be the case, right? If he has the intention, as an internal member, he might be able to collect more information. Brother Yu immediately overturned his own inference. It was most likely because he thought of his own hobbies. If he's really an opponent like this. Sword Demon only said half of his sentence before everyone looked at each other again. Normal methods won't be able to defeat him. Level isn't important to him at all. His most powerful weapon is information. Han family young master concluded. Hey, what about the question I was talking about? Why would a person like this appear in the game? Yutian Xinming said. If he's sneaking into the game, he wouldn't bother with the problem of whether or not Qianli is breaking the balance. He wouldn't expose his position in front of the players. If he's not, then if he really wanted to deal with Qianli, he could just ban his account. Why would he come into the game and organize the players to fight against him? Brother Yu analyzed the impossibility of a person like this in the game. The few of them shook their heads. They all felt that the appearance of this person was a little strange. No matter what, let's report this problem to the GM first. Brother Yu began to send messages. The GM also had a separate channel. Although it was basically automatic replies, this was the only channel for players to report problems to the system. Reality proved that there were still employees paying attention to this channel. Occasionally, players could get a human to communicate with them. Of course, it would be a pity not to buy lottery tickets on this day. Let's do this for now. When Qianli comes tonight, maybe he knows something about this person. Han family young master said. Then everyone couldn't help but criticize Gu Fei's behavior of playing the game for only a few hours. Then they left out of habit. Sword Demon was the last to leave the tavern. Once he left the tavern, he turned around and rushed to the leveling area. His attention was always diverted. Now that it was over, he immediately felt sad that he had dropped a level. Sword Demon felt that he was really unlucky. If he dropped a level, then so be it. But he had dropped a level twice, and it was infinitely close to dropping 2 levels. The last time was when he was almost level 31, and he dropped back to level 29. This time, when he was almost level 42, he dropped back to level 40. This kind of simple and straightforward method of dropping a level without considering the amount of experience gained had become a competition of luck to a certain extent. Sword Demon was of course the most unlucky kind. He dropped 1 level as if he was 2 levels. Sigh. Sword Demon sighed and looked up at the sky. Fallen leaves were often seen in Forest Shade City. If a tornado couldn't bring up a few leaves, it would be a waste of this great forest. At this time, there were fallen leaves falling in the sky. Sword Demon stared blankly, feeling that these fallen leaves were really fucking in line with his mood. Sword Demon sighed again. He was about to bury his head and continue to walk forward. The moment he lowered his head, he suddenly found that the fallen leaves in the sky suddenly rolled up with the wind. Sword Demon indeed didn't have Gu Fei's skills, but it would be too outrageous to think that he was also a novice in terms of actual combat experience. After playing for so long, how could a person who always paid attention to improving himself not pay attention to the accumulation of experience? At this time, the leaves suddenly rose up, but there was clearly no change in the direction of the wind. This was something falling. It was an attack. It was already amazing to be able to make such an inference, but after all, Sword Demon's reaction was a little slow. There was already a tingling pain on his shoulder. He didn't have time to look back. He suddenly rushed forward, turned 45 degrees sideways, and rushed toward the closer wall. When he leaned against the wall, he suddenly turned around. The dagger was already in his hand, and as he turned around, a cold light flashed. The person behind him quickly retreated and avoided Sword Demon's attack. After sticking out his tongue, he looked at Sword Demon and smiled sinisterly. Your reaction is very fast. Who are you? Sword Demon had already guessed the origin of the other party. In this strange place, the person who suddenly attacked him was most likely the priest's accomplice. Hee. Haven't we already met once before? The other party was still laughing. Sword Demon's heart trembled. He had already guessed who this person was. It was the thief who had suddenly appeared behind him in the forest. And that speed was definitely a skill. If it was a few days ago, Sword Demon wouldn't know what it was, but now that he had also joined the Assassin League, he had the opportunity to choose. He clearly remembered that a certain skill was described as, shake the afterimage and flash behind the opponent in an instant. At the same time, Sword Demon also thought of someone who knew this skill that Gu Fei had mentioned. Apple cider vinegar? Asked Sword Demon. The other party nodded, and his expression began to become gloomy. He stared at Sword Demon like he was staring at prey. A guy who had PK more than 1,600 players, his rich PK experience was needless to say. Such an opponent couldn't be careless at all. Sword Demon's mind was also highly focused. Although he knew that it hadn't been long since he left the tavern, and his companions might be nearby, he had no intention of calling for help. Although the opponent's sneak attack gave him a bit of an advantage, the opponent didn't bring any help. After all, this was just a one-on-one fight. Sword Demon's pride didn't allow him to call for help in such a situation. He had always been used to playing the role of someone who was shouted, "Help," not the one who called for help. Should I use Misty Ambush? Misty Ambush's skill was perfectly parked there, waiting for Sword Demon to use it. But just as he had this idea, he found that apple cider vinegar's posture had changed. He lowered his center of gravity, and just like the water-breaking arrow, he was very low, as if he was going to lie on the ground. He also knows the weakness of this skill. Sword Demon saw it. Obviously, the priest who was familiar with the game information had revealed this information to them. This kind of information might need to be summed up after many fights, but now, the other party had obtained it effortlessly. If not, why did they always say that the war of the 21st century was a war of intelligence, but in comparison, the water-breaking arrow was clearly better than apple cider vinegar. Up until now, he was still confident that he could dodge when Sword Demon used his skill, but apple cider vinegar, in order to guard against this skill, had already laid on the ground in advance. He really didn't care about his image at all. But how much better was he? Sword Demon couldn't help but smile bitterly. He didn't know when, but his back had already tightly pressed against the wall behind him. There was no other reason than that he also didn't have the confidence to dodge apple cider vinegar's shadow maneuver. I really envy Qianli and the others' superior reflexes. Sword Demon couldn't help but sigh. Hey, how can you be distracted when facing an enemy? Apple cider vinegar's voice sounded very close, right beside his ear. In his shock, Sword Demon had already been kicked away by apple cider vinegar. This kick didn't cause any damage, but Sword Demon understood that if the other party could kick him, he could naturally stab him. By doing this, it was clear that he didn't care about him at all. You don't even know how to cancel a skill. Apple cider vinegar looked at Sword Demon with disdain. On the eaves of a house in the distance, sharp arrows shone in the sunlight. Chapter 532. The bowstring was released with a twang sound, but the archer's wrist was suddenly lifted by someone. The archer was caught off guard and watched as the arrow deviated from its expected trajectory and pierced through the sky to kill a bird. What? Yutian Shinming turned his head in surprise and looked at the Han family young master who had lifted his wrist. No need, Han family young master said calmly. What's wrong, what's wrong? Brother Yuan and Scathed in Battle were anxious. Although this distance wasn't so far that they couldn't see anything, compared to Han family young master's binoculars and Yu Tianxinming's eagle eyes, the two of them reckoned that they must have missed important details. Sword Demon was defeated by someone, I was just about to make a move. Yu Tianxinming said. Obviously, the arrow just now was him trying to save him, but it was destroyed by Han family young master. Unscathed in Battle and Brother Yu also looked at Han family young master in confusion. He was the one who sent a private message to the three of them after leaving the tavern, saying that he was sure that the other party's attacks would definitely follow. From the fact that he found a bunch of extras to bluff, it can be seen that he doesn't have the strength to directly suppress us. Therefore, if he wants to take action, he can only take us down one by one when we are alone. Han family young master said, but it's not in line with my principles to be manipulated by others. It's his business if he wants to come, but it won't be easy for him to go back so easily. Do you think that the first person they will look for is Sword Demon? When the four of them met, only Sword Demon was missing. Brother, you roughly guessed Han family young master's plan. Sword Demon would be the bait, and the other four would secretly follow. Moreover, this plan was most likely unknown to Sword Demon, otherwise he could have said it in person or through the channel, but he used a private message, obviously to bypass Sword Demon. That's right. Han family young master nodded. Why? The three of them were somewhat puzzled. Because the first person they followed was Sword Demon, Han family young master said. How do you know? Previously in the tavern, I asked everyone when they were found, and then compared it with the time each of us arrived at the tavern. When Sword Demon arrived at the tavern and brother you hadn't arrived, someone had already been found. Without a doubt, they were following Sword Demon. After Sword Demon was the first to arrive, they already knew that this was our meeting place, Han family young master said. The three of them suddenly understood. Previously, when Han family young master asked the group of extras questions, he did ask questions like, roughly what time? Everyone was at the side, but they didn't expect that using this method would be so easy to see who was being followed. This, even if it was Sword Demon who was being followed last time, it doesn't have anything to do with them making a move on Sword Demon this time, right? Brother, you said. Of course not. The problem is, Sword Demon was resurrected at the Thieves' Guild after he died. He paid special attention to whether there would be someone waiting outside the resurrection point to kill him, or secretly following him to attack. In the end, he didn't find anything. Han family young master said. So, the other party might have some special methods. They don't even need to follow him to know the coordinates of Sword Demon, Han family young master said. There's such a thing. Brother, you said. With this kind of person, it wouldn't be strange for him to get some strange tools that we don't know about, right? Han family young master said. Isn't this too much? Using this kind of method to deal with players? Everyone was very sad and angry. So, there's no balance in this world. He keeps saying that he wants to maintain balance, but he uses this kind of unbalanced method. What a joke, Han family young master said. The Han family's young master said, but then again, even if he used some sort of balancing method, he's just a laughable idealist. He's still a joke. Anyway, he's a joke no matter what. The three were used to it. In a nutshell, they were all despised. It was hard to be a person, and it was even harder to not be despised by Han family young master. What balance? This idea is a joke. Hey, you three, were you complaining about his method just now? Don't tell me you're also trying to pursue balance. Han family young master turned his head and looked at the three. What's going on? We were just talking, why are we being targeted again? The three were sad and angry. Look, they were despised again when they weren't careful. So much nonsense. What happened to Sword Demon? Brother, you changed the topic. It's just an opponent, we don't have to worry at all, Han family young master said. But Yutian Shinming saw clearly that Sword Demon was at a disadvantage and had already been pushed down. In the end, he didn't even have the chance to say, but, because at this time, Han family young master had already elegantly jumped off the roof. Where are you going? The three immediately asked. There's no more wine, he replied and left, leaving the three looking at each other. Is he really fine? Han family young master's judgment was rarely wrong, but Yutian Shinming was still worried and continued to observe carefully with his eagle eyes. On the street, Sword Demon, who had been kicked, had already stood up. You don't even know how to cancel a skill. This was Apple Vinegar's mockery towards him. Sword Demon could only bear it silently because he had indeed neglected it at that moment. Footwork was indeed a movement skill that circled around to the back, but it wasn't like teleportation where one could reach the target in one go. If one could accurately grasp the time and movement speed, they could cancel the skill at the most crucial moment and naturally stay in the position they wanted. Just like what Apple Vinegar had done just now, he had just moved to the side of Sword Demon and was about to step behind Sword Demon when he cancelled the skill. Obviously, this operation was also very risky because Sword Demon, who was leaning against the wall, didn't have a back. If he hadn't cancelled the skill at that moment, in theory, he would have hit the wall. High risk naturally came with high reward. If Apple Vinegar hadn't kicked but used a knife, in addition to the sneak attack, Sword Demon would have been dead. Apple Vinegar didn't do that. Sword Demon knew very well that this was because Apple Vinegar had already lost respect for him. In Apple Vinegar's eyes, he was no longer an opponent. He was just a melon that could be casually dealt with a few cuts and kicks. Had he fallen to such a state? Why did he always have to be bored and envious of Qianli and the others' skills? He didn't have that kind of abnormal skills, but he should have his own way of fighting. Even if he was defeated and his level dropped, he could never lose the opponent's respect for him. Sword Demon took a deep breath and straightened his body. This time, he wasn't in a hurry to stick his back to the wall. "Don't be so careless," Apple Vinegar said. "My footwork can be used twice in a row. Do you think it's already on cooldown after just using it? It's not good for you to stand like this, right? My Misty Strike hasn't been used yet. It's also not on cooldown," Sword Demon said. Apple Vinegar's expression changed slightly. He didn't say anything else and immediately lowered his center of gravity. He actually didn't refute and immediately did it. Sword Demon looked at Apple Vinegar's actions. This at least gave him one piece of information: if he really used Misty Strike when Apple Vinegar was defenseless, he definitely wouldn't be able to avoid it. Apple Vinegar was very sure of this, so he had no choice but to use this posture. He knew that this posture was very ugly, so he wouldn't keep wasting time with him like this. He would make his move as soon as possible. A figure flashed. He moved. This thought flashed through Sword Demon's mind, but he didn't have the slightest intention of catching Apple Vinegar's figure. He only did one thing: he quickly stretched out his arms and quickly squatted down. His left arm was hit. Sword Demon had already expected this. He didn't dodge or retreat at all. Instead, he swung his arm forward with all his might, and his right hand chased after him with all his might and slashed fiercely. A figure fell to the ground beside him with a shocked and incredulous expression on his face. Sword Demon wasn't prepared to give him a chance to stand up again. He waved his left hand and stabbed down with his dagger. Then, he turned around and slashed with his right hand. There was no skill, no elegant posture. A person who was already lying on the ground. Sword Demon alternated his left and right hands against his back, slashing again and again. He suddenly felt that what he was doing was really cruel and perverted. This didn't seem like a PK in the game, but more like a butcher-style murder. Fortunately, the situation didn't make things too difficult for Sword Demon. After a few consecutive slashes, Apple Vinegar couldn't hold on anymore. A flash of white light disappeared, and the ground was clean without a trace of blood. Sword Demon let out a long breath and sat down on the ground. He finally found a way to deal with Shadow Foot in his own way. Opening his arms would undoubtedly increase the radius of the opponent's skill and give him more time to react. However, when Sword Demon suddenly opened his arms like this, the opponent was unprepared. The high-speed movement of Shadow Foot caught him off guard. Perhaps Apple Vinegar had thought of cancelling the skill the moment he saw the Sword Ghoul open its arms. He had thought of circling around the Sword Ghoul's arms, but unfortunately, he was too fast. By the time he thought of that and was about to make his next move, he had already collided with the Sword Ghoul's arms. Phantom footwork was just a movement skill. It wasn't a charge or a foggy ambush, so it didn't have much destructive power. For the Sword Demon, who was already prepared, it was only natural for him to trip him. But it was still close. Sword Demon thought. If the distance between them was a little further, with apple vinegar's proficient control skills, he might have had time to cancel or circle around it. If the distance between them was a little closer, apple vinegar might have circled behind him when he opened his arms. Then, the one who turned into white light and disappeared would be him. Yutian Shinming, who was on the roof in the distance, had his mouth wide open and was speechless. Sword Demon seems to have killed that guy. Brother Yuan, unscathed in battle, asked doubtfully. Yutian Shinming nodded blankly. How did he do it? Didn't you say that Sword Demon had been killed by him? This time, the opponent was killed by Sword Demon. The difference is that Sword Demon immediately chased after him and stabbed him in the back several times, killing him. Yutian Shinming said. The three of them had the same image of a person holding a sharp blade, pressing another person to the ground and stabbing him in the back, causing blood and flesh to splatter everywhere. Too scary. The three of them shuddered. So violent and so cruel. Is it because he has been hanging out with Qianli recently? Chapter 533. The street was still the same, the wind was still blowing, and the leaves were still dancing. However, now that he was in a different mood and saw the same scene, his feelings were vastly different. The streets were filled with hope, the wind was comfortable, and the falling leaves were warm. At this time, there was no trace of melancholy in the Sword Demon's heart. He put away the dagger and ate a mouthful of bread to recover his health. Sword Demon glanced at the attributes. There was no increase in PK value. This was not surprising. Without a doubt, apple vinegar had attacked Sword Demon first. When it came to active PK and passive PK, the system would judge them. Generally, as long as the active party made a clear attack on the passive party, it would be judged as active PK. The passive party would not receive any PK points even if they counterattacked. However, how could a dumb system fight against humans? After roughly grasping the rules of PvP, there was now a way to cheat PvP among the players. The first attack was often a feint. For example, when an arrow was shot, it looked like it flew past your ear, but in reality, it wasn't aimed at you. The system knew about this, but if you immediately counterattacked after being startled, you would be tricked. The one who initiated the PK would be you, and the other party would generously kill you, not leaving any PK points for you, and then leave comfortably. Of course, there was no such method between Sword Demon and Apple Cider Vinegar. Apple Cider Vinegar's first attack dealt damage. Any time you dealt damage, you would be set as the active PK party. Even if it was like the previous PK trick where you were aiming at a tree instead of a person, but after you fired an arrow, a person suddenly appeared from behind the tree and collided with your arrow. Although it was a misunderstanding, it was a pity that you would become the active PK party. As a result, a reverse method of cheating PK was born. The ones who suffered the most from this were the mages. While they were farming monsters in an area of effect, someone with bad intentions would suddenly rush out and let their spells graze them. Then, they would come over and kill the mage. There would be no PK points. Thus, cheating PK in this way, cheating PK in that way, cheating PK in this 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 way, and cheating PK in this way. Sword Demon couldn't help but think of this again from the fact that his counterattack didn't get any PK points. However, Sword Demon was not interested in this kind of wretched strategy that avoided PK value, and he did not use it often. However, he knew that Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming in the elite squad were experts in this field. The two of them would sometimes discuss and exchange their experiences, either beside him or in the channel, and Sword Demon had learned a lot from them. Apple Vinegar's sudden sneak attack was nothing more than a small embellishment. After playing the game for so long, he had experienced all kinds of sneak attacks. This time, it was nothing more than a coincidence. Sword Demon didn't take it to heart at all. After eating the bread and recovering, he continued to stride into the forest. Of course, he did not forget to remind everyone in the channel that the enemy could launch a sneak attack at any time. Everyone, be careful. The three on the rooftop of the street saw that Sword Demon had killed Apple Vinegar and left safely. They also jumped down from the rooftop with relief. Before they could take 2 steps, they received a message from the Han family young master. It was just one word, come. When the 3 of them received the message, their faces were filled with doubt. After looking at each other, they saw the same doubt on each other's faces. They knew that the other party had also received the mysterious word, come. Immediately after, the 3 of them received the coordinates at the same time and walked away together. Unscathed in battle laughed loudly. Brother Yu sighed and grabbed Yutian Shinming, who was running in the opposite direction. Yutian, this way. I know. We can go around it from this side. As if everyone didn't know that he had a bad sense of direction, he still wanted to argue. Brother Yu shook his head. Ignore him, let him go around, said Unscathed in battle. After all, Yutian Shinming was timid. He turned around and changed his words. It's the same if I go with you guys. When they arrived at the place that Han family young master mentioned, they didn't see any trace of him. Just as they were about to ask, their vision darkened. A figure blocked the sunlight above their heads. Han family young master stood on the roof and looked down at the 3 of them. The young master of the Han clan always looked at people with a hint of disdain. In addition to this angle, the 3 of them instantly felt even more uncomfortable. However, this room was even higher than the previous one. The 3 of them looked left and right but couldn't find a place to step on. The young master of the Han clan pointed 300 meters away. Over there. Damn, why didn't you say so earlier? The 3 of them climbed up the wall and stood beside Han family young master. Their position was higher and they had a better view. Han family young master raised his binoculars again. He seemed to be chasing after something. The 3 of them looked at the direction he pointed with the binoculars. They looked and looked until Han family young master suddenly said, "You guys don't have binoculars. What are you looking at? Then why did you call us here?" The 3 of them were going crazy. It's convenient for us to do something later. Han family young master said. Do what? What are you looking at? The 3 of them were anxious to death. Apple cider vinegar. Han family young master answered. The 3 of them widened their eyes. He was the guy who ambushed Sword Demon just now. Han family young master said. How did you know? The 3 of them asked in unison. As soon as they started fighting, Sword Demon immediately leaned his back against the wall. His purpose was obviously to guard against an attack from behind. Although his opponent was a thief who had skills like sap and backstab, he didn't need to use such an exaggerated method to guard against it. Therefore, there's only one explanation. His opponent had skills related to his back. In summary, other than Qianli who can teleport and that apple cider vinegar who has some skills, who else could it be? Han family young master said. Make sure there's enough shadow. Brother Yu always remembered these things very clearly. That's right. That guy did have a very strange high-speed movement skill. Yutian Shinming relied on his eagle eyes. Although it wasn't as sharp as binoculars, he could still see much more clearly than Brother Yu and Unscathed in battle. Han family young master spread his hands, meaning that it was obvious at a glance. It was obvious at a glance, but the 3 of them didn't see it. No one responded because no one wanted to take the initiative to be looked down upon. After a moment of silence, Yutian Shinming changed the topic. But he was still killed by Sword Demon in the end. As expected of Sword Demon. Yutian Shinming praised. That was just an illusion. Han family young master said. Why? The 3 of them didn't understand. He didn't die. Han family young master said. How could that be? I saw him flash white light and disappear. Yutian Shinming said. Does flashing white light and disappearing mean death? Yutian Shinming couldn't escape the disdain. But after thinking about it, he immediately understood. Flashing white light and disappearing didn't mean death. They had used this before. Wind-chasing emblem. Brother, you shouted. That's right. He continued with certainty, apple vinegar has accumulated over 1600 PKs. Even if he didn't get a higher level emblem like Qianli predicted, he might have a level 1 emblem. So he prepared a mission beforehand. If he couldn't defeat Sword Demon, he would use this teleportation function to escape. Yutian Shinming said. Maybe this isn't specifically against Sword Demon. It's just his habit. Using this function of the emblem, he would always have a completed mission on him. That way, if he was in danger, he could immediately use this teleportation function to escape. Brother, you said. That makes sense. Unscathed in battle nodded, PK 1600 never failed. This can be said to be very strong. So there's such a factor in it. Brother, you nodded. The actual number of PKs he fought might be more than that. It's just that when he failed, he always used the emblem to teleport away. So even if he lost, it wouldn't cause him to lose a level. This function of the emblem isn't bad. I have to get one. Unscathed in battle was tempted. Can I have more? Yutian Shinming was a little depressed. He already had the emblem at that time, but he sold it to Slender Waist Dance. And the mission was stacked. Everyone had their own record. Yutian Shinming didn't know how it would be calculated if he continued for another 100 or 200 times. Brother Yu patted him to comfort him, but he clearly did not take Imperial Sky Divine Ming's conflict to heart, and immediately turned to look at the Han family's young master. So when you left just now, you actually came to this place, waiting for him to come out from the wanted mission office? You already predicted that he would use this method to escape. The young master of the Han family replied with an expression that said, of course. What is he doing now? The three asked. If he has this kind of habit, of course he accepted another mission. He's going to complete it first and prepare for another teleportation function. Brother, you guessed. Wait, if he has this kind of habit, why did he die to Qianli last time? Yutian Shinming asked. Qianli? Any rogue would die in one hit. Even a cleric like me wouldn't have the chance to heal him. You still want to teleport? Han family young master asked. Where's the apple cider vinegar? Yutian Shinming quickly changed the topic. You wouldn't understand even if I told you the coordinates. Han family young master said. Anyway, what we need to do now is to take him down before he completes this mission. Then what are you waiting for? What are you talking about? Yutian Shinming jumped. Idiot. I have to at least see if his mission target is in the city or outside the city. If he's going straight to the forest, what's the point of chasing? Han family young master said. Then is it in the city or outside the city? Yutian Shinming asked. I already said to take him down. Of course it's in the city. Hurry up and get to work. All of you go down. Han family young master blasted the three off the roof. Brother you and Yutian together. Wu Shang, you go alone. Move according to my arrangement and find a street to trap him. Han family young master said. Yutian Shinming always felt ashamed at times like this. Because of his poor sense of direction, he always had to have a babysitter by his side. In fact, he had been working hard, but the effect was minimal. At this time, he didn't dare to be stubborn because it would really ruin things. After the three responded, they split into two sides and headed towards the coordinates that Han family young master indicated to catch the apple cider vinegar. Butterfly knot, counterattack, counterattack, counterattack. Chapter 534. Apple Vinegar was in a bad mood. Child Elite Group's guess was right that he had used the wind-chasing emblem's teleportation function to escape. However, it hadn't been long since Apple Vinegar obtained the wind-chasing emblem. He had piked more than 1,600 times and never lost a level. It wasn't because of the wind-chasing emblem that he could be so unrestrained. It was more because of the special environment of the main city he was in, Xiaowu City. However, after obtaining the wind-chasing emblem, he realized that this teleportation function could be said to be a shortcut to escape in times of crisis. Therefore, he hung up a completed mission in case of emergencies. Today's teleportation in the battle with Sword Demon was actually the first time Apple Vinegar had used this function to escape. This was the reason why Apple Vinegar was in a bad mood. He liked the thrill of piking and the excitement of piking. To him, escaping after being defeated was also a thrilling and interesting thing. He had used this teleportation function because he had been forced into a situation where he had no way of escaping. To Apple Vinegar, this was embarrassing and humiliating. Damn! Apple Vinegar cursed. He couldn't help but touch his back where Sword Demon had stabbed him. As he hadn't died but teleported, there was still a stinging sensation on his back. After touching it, he came back with a palm full of blood. Apple Vinegar gritted his teeth again. After checking the coordinates on the wind-chasing emblem, Apple Vinegar adjusted the direction of his advance. Han family young master wasn't wrong about this. Since he had the wind-chasing emblem, although he was unwilling to use the function on it, Apple Vinegar would still hang up a mission. No matter what, this made him feel at ease. After thinking about it, Apple Vinegar felt a little happy and proud when he used the teleportation function to escape just now. He definitely didn't expect that I'm actually not dead. This was the biggest comfort Apple Vinegar could obtain at the moment. Sword Demon, wait for me. I'll be back soon. After looking at the coordinates on the wind-chasing emblem, Apple Vinegar took out another scroll and opened it to look at Sword Demon's ID and the moving coordinates behind it. This was the trap that Yi Xiaowu and the others had set up when they first met Sword Demon in the forest. Skill Scroll, Inescapable Mark. This was a priest skill. After casting it, the caster would be marked with an inescapable mark, and the caster would be able to locate the caster at any time. On the other hand, Yi Xiaowu and the others were only using single-use skill scrolls, so the coordinates were displayed in the form of scrolls. In order to maintain it, the caster needed to constantly inject mana into it. At this time, moving or eating some fruits to replenish their mana would not cause the skill to be interrupted. This was very different from ordinary skills. On the other hand, scrolls needed to be maintained by consuming new scrolls. Theoretically, both methods could be used to track the traces permanently. In order to remove this kind of magic, unless the caster voluntarily gave up, the caster, or the user of the scroll died and went offline, the mark would be erased. In addition, there was a possibility that the tracking would be interrupted when the carrier of the mark was teleported over a long distance. However, none of these things could possibly happen. Apple Vinegar had decided to immediately continue to chase after the Sword Demon after completing the wanted mission at hand. Apple Vinegar hurried on his way. Since Forest Shade City was also a strange place to him, it was a bit troublesome to track the coordinates. He often took detours when rushing to the target. Apple Vinegar chased patiently. After checking the coordinates again and checking his own position, Apple Vinegar was sure that the target was not far ahead. Speeding up, he even saw a guy with a number above his head at the end of the street. Finally found him. Apple Vinegar let out a long breath and took out his dagger from his pocket. Apple Vinegar was familiar with sneak attacks. Even if there was no fog in Forest Shade City, he could find an angle that was hard to detect. Apple Vinegar stared at the other party, moving forward step by step. It was too exciting. Apple Vinegar's eyes glowed with a fiery light. He liked the feeling of being regarded as something in his pocket while the other party was unaware of it. The moment the dagger stabbed into the other party's body, the other party's terrified and incredulous eyes would make Apple Vinegar feel great satisfaction. "Bro, I'm coming," Apple Vinegar said in his heart. Suddenly, he used swift movement and prepared to sneak up behind the person like lightning. Unexpectedly, before he could rush out of the street, a warrior who looked like an uncle sunbathing on the side of the road suddenly attacked him. Charging diagonally, Apple Vinegar saw it from the corner of his eye and hurriedly cancelled swift movement. It's an expert. Apple Vinegar had already determined that if he didn't cancel swift movement, they would collide at this speed. When a swift thief and a warrior collided, the thief only needed to pay attention to how the word death was written. If he changed swift movement to normal speed, the other party's charge would be a step faster. If he seized the opportunity, he could even hit the back of the head with his club. Apple Vinegar had already reached for the big club in his pocket as he calculated in his heart. He didn't think too much about where this person came from or why he ambushed him. This was because he was passionate about this kind of work. He wouldn't think too much about the reason. In any case, he would kill him first. Unexpectedly, when the warrior saw that Apple Vinegar cancelled stealth, he immediately stopped his charge. Apple Vinegar had a big club in his hand, but it was facing the warrior head-on. He couldn't use sap at all. The warrior held a sword in each hand and swung it at Apple Vinegar. Apple Vinegar dodged it, took 2 steps back, and quickly activated stealth. However, before he could completely disappear, he saw the warrior wave his hand. Apple Vinegar didn't know what attack it was. He just instinctively lowered his head to avoid it. In the end, he saw a handful of white ash come at him. Apple Vinegar's head wasn't hit, but his body was covered in white ash. Fuck. Apple Vinegar realized that he was already in stealth, but he didn't know what the white ash on his body was. It didn't follow him into stealth mode. Stealth became meaningless, and he was completely exposed to his opponent. Such stealth was worse than not stealth. Apple Vinegar hurriedly cancelled stealth and dodged the warrior's attack again. Footwork Shadow. Apple Vinegar, who had fought in PvP, wouldn't panic so quickly. He continued to use his skills in an orderly manner. Once Footwork Shadow was used, all that was left in front of his opponent was an afterimage. Apple Vinegar had already flashed behind his opponent, dagger in his right hand and staff in his left. Backstab. Sap, followed by backstab. Using sap to control the time and wait for backstab's cooldown to recover, forming a double backstab combo. This was Apple Vinegar's usual method of ambushing. As he didn't have the dual mastery skill, he couldn't use sap with his left staff. During this process, he needed to quickly exchange backstab with his right hand and his left staff. Apple Vinegar was already very familiar with this method. His equipment, which enhanced sap, extended the duration of sap, just in time for backstab to come off cooldown. Together with Footwork Shadow, he could suddenly flash behind his opponent. This could be said to be a perfect killer move. However, this time, Apple Vinegar experienced the feeling of imperfection. Just as he flashed behind his opponent and used sap, his opponent's skill had already been used. Whirlwind Slash. Although warriors had evolved to level 40 and had class advancement, this level 30 skill was still the strongest attack skill of a warrior. Apple Vinegar instantly felt a sharp blade on his body. Although his backstab had perfectly pierced into his opponent, for a strong warrior, what was a backstab? Apple Vinegar was no longer able to continue his skillful combo. Whirlwind Slash made it impossible for him to control his direction. Apple Vinegar's frail thief body was instantly swept into the air. The Whirlwind Slash was like a home run, directly smashing Apple Vinegar into the wall. Apple Vinegar felt like his whole body was falling apart. This Whirlwind Slash was definitely not light. What was even more infuriating was that the warrior immediately retracted his skill, not wasting it at all. He even gave Apple Vinegar a thumbs up and said, "You're the first to take my Whirlwind Slash at such a close distance. You're a real man. I admire you. Who are you?" Apple Vinegar was finally curious about this question. This was because he had sensed that his opponent wasn't like him, who was casually piking for fun. It was obvious that his opponent was targeting him. This was because his opponent was extremely wary of his shadow footwork skill. The moment Apple Vinegar used shadow footwork, his Whirlwind Slash was already ready to be unleashed. It was obvious that he knew that Yi Ci would appear behind him. Shadow Step wasn't a common skill that everyone knew, but this warrior was fully prepared for it. Of course, he was someone who knew about apple vinegar. Moreover, this guy was very experienced. If he had used Whirlwind Slash the moment apple vinegar used Shadow Step, it was very likely that apple vinegar wouldn't have been able to turn behind him in time. This way, although he wouldn't have taken damage, apple vinegar might have sensed it in advance and cancelled the skill. Therefore, he purposely delayed a little. Just like that, he took a backstab from apple vinegar, but apple vinegar took a full Whirlwind Slash. At this moment, one was half dead in a corner, while the other was fighting in the middle of the street. Victory and defeat were obvious. Why aren't you flying? I heard that you have a Windchaser emblem. Bayu, you can fly away. Quick, show me. The warrior continued to gloat. Fuck. Apple vinegar gritted her teeth. She had lost, but why did she lose to such a tasteless guy? Her PvP mainly relied on sneak attacks. It could be said to be despicable, but winning was also a sense of satisfaction. She would never be so arrogant. This guy was really wretched. But, he really knows me well. Apple vinegar looked at the wretched uncle in front of her and suddenly nodded. You're unscathed in battle from Child Elite Group. Not bad. You've actually heard of Grandpa's name. I have to praise you again. Unscathed in battle nodded in satisfaction. The best warrior in online gaming? Pfft. Apple vinegar spat fiercely at unscathed in battle. Butterfly not, there was one time when Butterfly drank too much and still felt terrible the next day. He saw a bottle of apple vinegar on the table and drank it. Then, he felt even worse. That day, a character called Apple Vinegar appeared in the novel. Apple Vinegar, that's how you came to be. Can you blame me? Chapter 535. No matter how slow a warrior was, they wouldn't be hit by a mouthful of spit. Moreover, a warrior's slowness was reflected in their movement. If they were slow in raising their arms and turning their head, they would be eaten alive by a class that was faster. Therefore, for slow classes like warriors and priests, players had a more appropriate description: short legs. Unscathed in battle with short legs dodged apple vinegar's spit. Seeing that his opponent still dared to resist, and in such a disgusting way at that, he was furious. He took a deep breath, coughed heavily, and immediately retaliated. Apple cider vinegar naturally wouldn't be hit, but Zhang Wushang's mouth was full of spit. After he spat, it was especially fragmented. Apple cider vinegar dodged the bullet, but it didn't dodge the scattered shrapnel. It was drenched by the spit. Apple cider vinegar was even more indignant. She quickly wiped her mouth with her hand and wanted to retaliate. Perhaps it was because she was too emotional, but she did not control her strength well, or her lips were trembling. She spat out a mouthful of apple cider vinegar, which was extremely poor quality. The moment it left her mouth, it was slapped down by her own lips. It hung beautifully at the corner of her mouth. Coupled with the crooked nose and slanted eyes caused by her anger, she looked like she was having a stroke. Ha 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 ha, now you're convinced. Unscathed in battle was even more delighted. Even a spit was enough to knock his opponent down. Unscathed in battle applauded his own gaming talent. Apple vinegar was so angry that he almost fainted. He didn't have the face to spit again. Wouldn't he be like a child if he didn't stop? Moreover, looking at Unscathed in battle's shameless expression, there was an 80% chance that he would have the courage to spit back 10 times. He definitely wouldn't think that this kind of competition was childish and boring. Apple vinegar felt that he had to have the integrity of an expert. He couldn't use this kind of method to compete with others. He calmed himself down and said angrily, "What do you want?" At this moment, apple vinegar's HP had fallen below the warning line. The player's attributes had also been greatly weakened due to their low HP. At this moment, apple vinegar was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. However, undying war had yet to send her back to the resurrection point, leaving her somewhat confused. Is this guy going to tie me up and spit on me? Apple Vinegar felt that such a shameless method was definitely unscathed in battle. He could not help but panic. He even forgot that he was the one who spat first. What do you think? We'll have to find out as we go. As Unscathed in Battle spoke, he took 2 steps forward and picked up the defenseless Apple Vinegar. Ignoring his resistance, he casually dragged him across the street. The players on the street all looked at him. However, in this world, acting bravely for a just cause was equivalent to being a hero saving a damsel in distress. When they saw that the person being dragged by Unscathed in Battle was not a damsel in distress, they only took a few glances at him. No one dared to stand up for him. Just like that, Apple Vinegar tragically used his body as a brush as he was dragged by Unscathed in Battle, leaving a long mark on the street. Hello. Unscathed in Battle waved enthusiastically as he greeted the 2 people in front of him. The 2 looked at him, then their eyes stopped at the apple vinegar in his hand. They were confused. What is this? Unscathed in Battle turned back to look. Fuck, how did it end up like this? I almost scared myself. Shady Forest City was a village. The ground there was very muddy. The apple vinegar had turned into a mud monkey after being scratched. It's apple vinegar. Brother Yu and Yutian Shinming finally realized that it was a person. However, they had never seen apple vinegar before. They could only deduce from Unscathed in Battle's purpose for coming here. Yup. I took care of him so easily. PK more than 1,600 people. That's because you haven't met me yet. Zhan Wushang was bragging to the heavens, but Apple Vinegar, who was being held by him, was very unconvinced. If she hadn't been careless and hadn't expected the other party to come prepared and know her tricks, she wouldn't have been defeated so easily. Where's Gongzi? Unscathed in Battle asked. He'll probably be here soon. Brother, you said. The Han family young master pointed out the coordinates along the way. Finally, after bringing them to the intersection on both sides of the street, he said, pincer attack. He didn't give any other instructions. It was likely that the pincer attack had been completed by then, so he stopped giving instructions. Naturally, they should be heading in this direction. Let's find a place first. Brother, you suggested. He didn't have the same thick skin as Unscathed in Battle. At this time, the apple vinegar continued to attract a lot of attention. Unscathed in Battle welcomed these gazes proudly as if he was showing off his spoils of war. Brother Yu, on the other hand, felt very awkward among the onlookers. Apple Vinegar was dragged into a secluded street with no one around. With a wave of his hand, he was thrown into a corner. There was no way out here. Even if Apple Vinegar sat quietly and waited for his HP to recover, he still couldn't think of a way to escape. He had already guessed who the people in front of him were. He had also understood the situation of the child elite group. Oh. You've caught Apple Vinegar. The Han family young master's voice finally rang out. He had received Brother Yu's guidance and had come to this place to meet up with everyone. This cleric is their leader, Han family young master. Damn, is he a ladyboy? Apple Vinegar was shocked. The information he had gathered only said that the cleric, Han family young master, was the leader of the child elite group and was very skilled. Apart from that, nothing else was mentioned. The Han family young master slowly walked over and sized up Apple Vinegar. After casting an appraisal spell, he nodded. Level 40, what a good level, it's all thanks to the foundation laid down by Qianli. Brother Yu laughed. How about it, do you want to drop this level? The Han family young master asked Apple Vinegar. Apple Vinegar didn't reply. The Han family young master turned his head to look at the people beside him. If you drop this level, you'll lose a lot, right? You'll be wasting your class. Unscathed in Battle said. I heard that someone even joined a faction. It seems like he'll disappear because he drops a level. Brother Yu said. After becoming an assassin, the assassin's exclusive skills will also disappear. For example, something like that. Yu Tian Xinming said. Leveling a level 40 skill is also a waste. How pitiful. Unscathed in Battle said. If it was me, I'd rather kill myself than drop this level 40. Yu Tian Xinming said. That's what you think. From the looks of it, the man in front of us doesn't seem to care about this level. The Han family young master had been paying attention to Apple Vinegar's expression. Their discussion made his face reveal a slightly regretful expression. He clearly didn't want to drop a level, but he didn't show any signs of fear. He clearly understood that the Han family young master and the others were threatening him, but he wasn't prepared to compromise. Actually, as long as you answer a few of our questions, we won't be interested in you. Han family young master said. Apple Vinegar still kept his mouth shut. I knew it, this kind of method doesn't work well in the game. Han family young master said regretfully. Life in the game wasn't worth much, so it was easy to show one's integrity in the face of threats. Although Apple Vinegar's life was a valuable level 40, it was a pity that his integrity was also a bit stronger. Your boss is an idiot, what's the point of protecting him? Yu Tian Xinming said. I'm just doing what I'm happy about, what does he have to do with me? Apple Vinegar suddenly said. What a man. Looks like you really aren't going to sell some information to save your life. Han family young master said. Apple Vinegar started to play silent again. Then we can only respect the rules of the game. Kill him, kill him. Han family young master waved his hand. Unscathed in Battle raised his blade, and Apple Vinegar, who didn't have much life left, immediately turned into a white light and disappeared. Unscathed in Battle and Yu Tian Xinming stared at the ground with their eyes wide open. The ground was very clean. The two were regretful. Damn, he didn't even drop an equipment. What a waste of time. Unscathed in Battle sighed. Waste of time. He's someone who enjoys PvP and has experienced over 1,600 PvP battles. Do you think someone like him would be afraid of death? Han family young master said. So you already knew that he wouldn't speak? Unscathed in Battle asked. Of course. Han family young master said. Then what's the point of all this? Unscathed in Battle said. Who's the one who did all this? Did I say I was going to capture him alive for questioning? Han family young master asked. The three of them looked at each other. Thinking back to Han family young master's previous order, it was indeed a coordinate guide. In the end, he just said, pincer attack, and then disappeared. Brother Yu and Yu Tian Xinming looked at Unscathed in Battle. Unscathed in Battle immediately asked back, then why did you come over? Brother Yu called me over. Han family young master said. Unscathed in Battle and Yu Tian Xinming looked at Brother Yu. Weren't you going to come over? Brother Yu said vaguely. I was having a good time drinking at the bar when you suddenly told me your coordinates and told me to come over. I thought you guys found something big. So that's what it was about. Han family young master said. Brother Yu was extremely ashamed. He realized that he had been thinking too much. But you clearly asked a lot too. Yu Tian Xinming said. Just now, Han family young master had threatened Apple Vinegar the moment he arrived. I just wanted you guys to clearly see that this method won't work on him. Han family young master said. TSK, seriously. The three of them didn't say it out loud, but they were all muttering in their hearts. Then our mission this time was actually just to get rid of Apple Vinegar. Unscathed in Battle asked. Then what other experts do you have in mind? Han family young master asked. Unscathed in Battle didn't know. He was just used to thinking that Han family young master wouldn't assign such a simple and direct mission. There must be some deeper meaning and follow-up arrangements. He didn't expect it to be so simple and direct this time. There's nothing else. Unscathed in Battle didn't give up. Therefore, he saw the most familiar look on Han family young master's face. It was a look that said he was looking at an idiot. Then, He saw him turn around and leave. Impossible, this guy must have some other plan. He's not telling us. This is too despicable. Unscathed in battle said to Brother Yu and Yutian Shinming. That must be it. The two nodded heavily. That's one. Han family young master thought to himself as he walked. I'd like to see how many helpers you can lure. I'll get rid of them one by one for you. Let's see what you can do with your stomach full of information. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 536. The loss of Apple Vinegar's death was as terrible as everyone had expected. The assassin profession was gone, the faction that could only be joined after the profession was gone, the assassin's skill, Shadow Feat, that was learned after joining the faction was gone, and the state's skill, Assassin's Acuity, that improved one's combat ability after advancing to the assassin profession was naturally gone. In addition, the dagger in Apple Vinegar's hand also had the skill, Shadow Feat, but this skill was only for assassins. Apple Vinegar had degenerated into a thief and couldn't use it. Apple Vinegar didn't need to look at or calculate these losses to know that it was in his heart. Walking out of the resurrection point, he was inevitably a little disheartened. Without this level, he knew that he wouldn't have the slightest chance of winning against an expert like Sword Demon. Soon, he made the same move as Sword Demon. He strode forward with his head held high, facing the falling leaves that filled the sky, and plunged into the depths of the dense forest of Forest Shade City. Mission: Farming monsters. The two most common ways to gain EXP in the parallel world. In comparison, more people preferred the former. At least it was rich in variety, not like farming monsters where they just stayed in a circle to kill monsters. As for experts like Sword Demon, they used the method of farming monsters more. With skills and equipment, their efficiency in farming monsters was higher than the average player. Mission: only when they were interested in the unique rewards of certain missions, or when they were really sick of farming monsters, perhaps they would use this method to relieve themselves. Finally, in the evening, the culprit of all events, the legendary balance breaker Qianli, logged into the game. The system was fair, and this message was quickly conveyed to both parties online: your friend Qianli logged in. Gu Fei, who had been offline for a day, didn't know that so many things had happened while he was offline. When he entered the game, his thoughts were still stuck on the misunderstanding and awkwardness of Water Depth, Water Breaking Arrow, and the others. He was still thinking about how to deal with this matter, but as soon as he stepped into the game, the news had already swept in like a storm. Everyone in the channel and private chat was making a ruckus. What happened? Gu Fei asked. Everyone was talking at once, but Gu Fei finally understood the gist of the matter. Our preliminary conclusion is that even if this person isn't from the game company, he should have a great relationship with them. He has a lot of game information that players don't know about, and this is his most powerful weapon. I've already reported this situation to the online GM in the game's complaints section, but I haven't received any response yet, Brother Yu concluded. Hongchen Xiao? Gu Fei asked. What? No one understood. The priest you're talking about, is his name Hongchen Xiao? Gu Fei said. Ah. Do you know him? I do know someone who claims to be from the gaming company. His ID is Hongchen Xiao. He's a priest, right? Gu Fei recalled. The last time he met Yi Xiaowu was a long time ago. At that time, Gu Fei's gaming expertise wasn't as good as it was now. He didn't know how to use appraisal skills, and he didn't have much of an idea of players' equipment. Relying on the knowledge he had now, Gu Fei felt that Yi Xiaowu's equipment was indeed a priest's robe. Wait, this name sounds familiar. Brother Yu suddenly remembered and quickly started to look through his log. He quickly found this name. A long time ago, this was the name that was ahead of Qianli on the leveling efficiency leaderboard. No wonder. Now that he was so familiar with Gu Fei, Brother Yu knew that Gu Fei was terrifyingly efficient when it came to killing monsters. He was even stronger than Gu Fei, and he was also a priest. Brother Yu had always wondered who this ID was. It turned out to be someone from the gaming company. Needless to say, with his familiarity with the information, he could easily find the fastest and most reasonable leveling route. Hey, you're online. Let me ask. Gu Fei suddenly threw out such a message. Everyone was shocked. Fuck, these two are good friends. Long time no see. What's going on? Gu Fei was simple and direct. He greeted and asked questions at the same time. I guess your friend has already told you that your existence has caused damage to the game's balance. I have to stop it, Yi Xiaowu replied. Then what does deleting my account have to do with Sword Demon and the others? Gu Fei, of course, already knew that Sword Demon had dropped another level because of this. This undoubtedly hit Yi Xiaowu's sore spot. If he could make the decision, he would have deleted Gu Fei a long time ago. Why would he be in such dire straits that he even lost his job? Because of this, Yi Xiaowu was even more determined to get rid of Gu Fei. He did not hesitate to abandon the self-discipline that he was so proud of. Because of this, I'm no longer a game worker. Yi Xiaowu often said this to himself in his heart. He chose to quit his job because he felt that his identity as a game worker had become an obstacle to him holding back Gu Fei. He abandoned this identity. For him, it was like removing a shackle. Yi Xiaowu thought a little too much for a moment and forgot to reply to Gu Fei's message. Gu Fei waited impatiently and sent another message. Yi Xiaowu opened it and saw a string of numbers. What? Yi Xiaowu was a little confused. My coordinates. Find me directly. Gu Fei said. Fuck, you rookie. Yi Xiaowu was speechless. Don't you use a comma to separate the coordinates? The long string of numbers was like a phone number. I know you're strong, Yi Xiaowu replied. In a one-on-one PK, no one has the confidence to beat you. It doesn't matter. Send 10, 20, or even more. Gu Fei said. Yi Xiaowu really wanted to curse. Look, how arrogant. How could such an unbalanced thing not be harmonious? Thinking of this, Yi Xiaowu fiercely closed the chat window with Gu Fei. He had his own plans on how to be harmonious. Was he going to listen to him? In fact, in a contest with an ordinary player like Sword Demon, Yi Xiaowu could play a big role through his understanding of skills. But this skill was completely useless against Gu Fei. Although Gu Fei also used skills from the game, the methods he used were unconventional. The ingenuity of his methods had already surpassed the thinking of game designers. For example, double flame flash combined with stepping, turning, and swinging arms to make it like whirlwind slash. Yi Xiaowu's mind never had this kind of concept. How could he expose the flaws in Gu Fei's skills like he did with Sword Demon's Fog Strike? Gu Fei's strength was his greatest advantage in martial arts, not anything else. Yi Xiaowu's advantage was his understanding of all aspects of the game. As for martial arts, his understanding was zero. So for now, he really didn't dare to compete with Gu Fei in such a vulgar way. To use a common saying, to deal with Gu Fei, he could only use his wits, not his strength. Yi Xiaowu thought about these issues. He ignored a few more messages from Gu Fei. Right now, his headache was the matter of apple vinegar's level dropping. No one understood the huge gap between level 39 and 40 better than Yi Xiaowu. Apple vinegar could only temporarily retreat to the front lines. Although they weakened Sword Demon by a level, their side lost an even more important combat force. On this side, Gu Fei called out a few more messages, but Yi Xiaowu didn't reply. He resentfully said to the elite group, "Ignore me." "Are you, friends?" everyone asked in surprise. "Yes, we've met a few times before," Gu Fei said. "What's his background?" "I heard him say that he's from the game company," Gu Fei said. How could someone from the game company play the game? Everyone couldn't understand. Could it be that the parallel world is really so innovative? Feeling that Qianli is unbalanced, he didn't delete his account, but instead sent someone to fight with him. Yutian Shenming had a wild imagination. Idiot. This time, it wasn't just the Han family young master who collectively looked down on him. The problem is, why would he look for you guys if he was looking for me? Gu Fei was quite angry about this. Not to mention that it was the most honest and down-to-earth sword demon who was implicated. If he caused the Han family young master to drop a level, then it was more likely that everyone would collectively laugh at him. Didn't he tell you that it's because of your unbalance that it caused a chain reaction, so we're also unbalanced because of you? Han family young master said. What nonsense. Gu Fei said. In any case, you have to be careful. It looks like this guy is really going to bother you. Brother, you said. Gu Fei was silent for a long time before finally saying, you guys should be the ones who should be more careful, right? Collective tears. The most hurtful thing was always this kind of truth. Although the opponent's main target was Gu Fei, since he said that he wanted to deal with them as well, then they were indeed more dangerous than Gu Fei. After all, their strengths weren't on the same level. Brother Yu was already starting to get nervous. He really didn't have much confidence in fighting, so he immediately suggested, why don't we all try to move around together for now? Normally, with how big the game map is, it's not that easy to find a person. But those guys might have some special methods. For example, when they were chasing after the sword demon, they must have used some method that we don't know about. This is something we should pay attention to. Han family young master said. Is this the advantage that guy brings? Brother, you muttered. Where's the sword demon? Why aren't you saying anything? Gu Fei asked. The sword demon hadn't said a word in the channel. He's leveling up. Turn off the message. Han family young master replied. Gu Fei tried to send a private message. Sure enough, the other party's message was turned off. The sword demon was very focused on leveling up. It looked like he was preparing to stand up again in the shortest amount of time. Then, now that we know that guy's name, I'll go and clearly file a complaint against him. Brother, you said. I'm afraid it won't be of much use. That guy couldn't have thought of this. He's still so open about it. It looks like he's not afraid. Han family young master said. Then what do we do? Brother, you asked. You can continue to try. If you succeed, then we'll be happy. If not, then we'll have to spend a bit of effort to take care of them one by one. At present, the apple cider vinegar has been taken care of. The only known helper around him is that water-breaking arrow. Han family young master said. On the other side, Yi Xiaowu finally received a message from water-breaking arrow. I've basically contacted all the people I wanted to contact. Well, it's the same here. Yi Xiaowu responded. Butterfly not, after a week of killing, it's the weekend. Everyone needs to rest. Characters in novels also have human rights. Chapter 537. I've contacted them, but it's not that easy to get their approval. Water-breaking arrow replied. I knew it would be like this. We can't treat them like fools. Yi Xiaowu said, what do you think their current attitude is? Same, they both have certain doubts in their hearts. I think it would be more effective to make direct contact with them, just like how I made contact with the apple cider vinegar, water-breaking arrow said, the difference between them is the degree of doubt. Yeah. Yi Xiaowu said. However, there's one, Silvermoon. I haven't been able to contact him directly. It's hard to tell when he's online. From the 2 times he replied to me, one was at 5:37 in the morning, and the other was at 12:13 in the afternoon. But he doesn't appear at this time every day. Water-breaking arrow said, from the content of the replies, this guy has been stuck at the resurrection point for a long time by the players he offended. The only thing he can do is to come online and observe from time to time to see if there's a chance to escape. How long has he been stuck? Yi Xiaowu asked. About 10 days to half a month. Water-breaking arrow replied. Damn, both sides have a lot of perseverance. Yi Xiaowu sighed. I made a special trip to White Stone City to negotiate with Silvermoon face to face. I didn't meet him, but I saw the situation outside the Knights' camp in White Stone City. There's more than one group of people blocking him. And from what I know, someone put up a quest in the mercenary building. You can get a reward by hanging on to Silvermoon once. And Silvermoon seems to be at level 36 now, so he's easy to bully. People often pass by the Knights' camp. If this continues, I think his account will be useless. Water-breaking Arrow said. So, you haven't added him as a friend? Yi Xiaowu asked. I don't even know when he'll be online. I tried a minute ago, but he wasn't online again. Water-breaking Arrow said. Well, if he's stuck like this for another 10 days to half a month, maybe he'll give up the game. Yi Xiaowu said. Is Silvermoon really that important? From what I've heard, his character is trash to the extreme. Water-breaking Arrow said. He absorbed Silvermoon mainly for the Sword of the Kings in his hands. Currently, there are only 3 top-tier grade 70 weapons in the game. They're Drunk Qianli's Nightstream Sword, Silvermoon's Sword of the Kings, and the Thief's Dancing Wind Dagger. Among them, Dancing Wind wasn't a skill weapon. Its attack was powerful, and its additional stats were monstrous. However, it only strengthened the user's abilities. The Dark Streak was a weapon that dealt both physical and magical damage. Neither mages nor warriors could fully utilize its attack power. With Qianli's Drunk's current level, he probably couldn't even fully activate its coefficient, which meant that it didn't even have the ability to enhance his own abilities. Moreover, once he fully activated the Unseal skill, he would discover that the Dark Streak on the sword was a Dark Knight skill. He wouldn't be able to use it at all. Currently, the most valuable of these 3 weapons is Silvermoon's Sword of the Kings. The Battle Formation skill, King's Command, increases all the attributes of all members within range by 15%. Whether it's a solo or a group battle, it's extremely valuable. If we can get this, it'll be of great help to us no matter how we look at it. Yi Xiaowu said. But this person has caused quite a bit of trouble. Water-breaking Arrow sighed. Looks like we'll have to put in some effort. Yi Xiaowu nodded. How's the situation with the people you've contacted? Water-breaking Arrow asked Yi Xiaowu. It's basically similar to you. It looks like the one who'll be more troublesome is Jiannan. That guy didn't reply to my letter at all. Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon has the strongest weapon, Jiannan is one of the top 5 roaches and has the strongest strength. As expected, the most valuable person is the hardest to get. Water-breaking Arrow sighed. Hee, let's take it slow. Yi Xiaowu didn't show too much anxiety. I'll go to Baishur City myself and take a look at this Silvermoon situation. Then I'll continue to stay in Shady Forest City with Water Depth and the others. Water-breaking Arrow replied. Be careful, those guys might make a move on you. Hong Qianxiao said. Qianli's skills are indeed terrifying. But if it's in the woods, even if I can't beat him, I believe I can still escape. What's more, because of Water Depth, those guys should have some scruples. Water-breaking Arrow said. Gu Fei, Sword Demon, and the others didn't do anything to clarify Water-breaking Arrow's misunderstanding. However, Water Depth had already greeted Water-breaking Arrow on their behalf. Water-breaking Arrow also knew that the 2 people's previous actions were actually a misunderstanding. Originally, they could have let bygones be bygones, but who knew that the 2 suddenly had such a hostile relationship? Coupled with the previous matter, the messy cause and effect relationship was entangled. It was simply a mess. Water-breaking Arrow felt a headache just thinking about it. How would those guys deal with it? The Shady Forest looked the quietest, but it was actually the busiest place. Especially during the peak hours at night, most of the players in Shady Forest City were buried in the forest. There were people of all levels. Farming monsters, completing quests, and even having an online relationship. This was a good choice. In the territory of the Extreme Frost Guild, Water Depth was in a good mood and wandering around. The misunderstanding between him and his friend had been resolved, and he had also reconciled with Lu Ku. Although he had been teased by the young master of the Han family early in the morning, it had only slightly dampened his good mood. At this moment, he could still happily chat with his gang members. "President, someone is looking for you," a comrade suddenly reported. "Who?" Water Depth asked. "It's that mage." "Oh, I'll come over." Water Depth was happy, thinking that this guy might have gone offline in the morning in a hurry to go to work. As soon as he showed up at night, didn't he immediately run over to apologize? "Well, based on this performance, I won't make things difficult for him." Water Depth excitedly walked towards the outer circle, and the outer circle had already let Gu Fei pass. The two met in the forest. Water Depth was very magnanimous, and said loudly, "Brother, you're here." "Yeah." Gu Fei's face was black. "Where's Water Breaking Arrow?" "Yeah." Apologizing to Water Breaking Arrow, even Sword Demon hadn't done this. This guy was even more sincere than Sword Demon. Water Depth was moved, and quickly said, "He's not here now. Actually, don't worry too much about it. It's just a misunderstanding. It's fine as long as it's over. We're all good brothers, it's no big deal." "What are you talking about?" Gu Fei frowned. "Ha, brother, you're too serious. Actually, I'm very casual and easy to talk to. It's fine, it's fine. I've already forgiven you," Water Depth said. Gu Fei looked at Water Depth like he was looking at a monster. "Forgiven me? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the things you and Sword Demon did before. Don't worry, it's just a misunderstanding." "I already know," Water Depth said. "Oh, that thing." Gu Fei remembered this when he first came online, but after he came online and found out that so many things had happened, he had already forgotten about it. At this time, Water Depth suddenly brought it up again. Gu Fei temporarily returned to the past, and hurriedly apologized, "I'm really sorry, it was a misunderstanding." "Ha, I said it's fine." Water Depth vigorously patted Gu Fei's shoulder. "Yeah, then, what about Water Breaking Arrow?" Gu Fei said. "You don't need to be so serious. Old Duan won't mind. I'll help you call for him later." Water Depth said heroically. "No, I'm looking for him for something else." Gu Fei said. "What is it?" Water Depth asked casually. "Kill him." "What?" Water Depth's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. "Don't worry, this time it's definitely not a misunderstanding." Gu Fei vigorously patted Water Depth's shoulder. Wait a minute. What the hell are you guys up to this time?" Water Depth said. "This time it has nothing to do with you, it's completely a personal grudge." Gu Fei said. "What's going on?" Water Depth was depressed. How many more days could these good days last? He just thought that everything was over, and now he was causing trouble again. Water Breaking Arrow and his other friend have some conflicts with me. Of course it has nothing to do with you, so you don't need to worry too much about it," Gu Fei said. "Don't worry too much." Water Depth was depressed. "What are you saying? They're all my brothers, how can I not care? Can't we just sit down and talk about it? If you guys are free, then you guys talk. I'm in a hurry." Gu Fei patted Water Depth and asked, "Water Breaking Arrow still hasn't arrived?" Water Depth blankly shook his head. At this moment, his brain wasn't enough. "Then I'll wait for him here." Gu Fei pulled out his sword and stabbed it into the ground. A flash of light flashed past Water Depth's eyes. "I say, what's going on? Can you tell me?" Water Depth asked. Like this. Gu Fei roughly explained. "So you're saying that old Duan came to help us because we lost the guild confrontation quest, so now he's giving us compensation?" Water Depth asked. "Right, to help you guys become stronger and then win that whatever battle later." Gu Fei said. And the reason why we'll get compensation is because you're too strong, so strong that you can't beat us. So we shouldn't lose, so we should get compensation? Water Depth asked. That seems to be the case. What kind of nonsense is this? Water Depth was in a daze. That's what everyone says. Gu Fei nodded. Everyone couldn't understand Yi Xiaowu's bunch of theories. If he says compensation, then it's compensation. Did he ask me? Water Depth was indignant. Who said it wasn't? Gu Fei said. And he means that the problem is all on you. Then wouldn't it be over if he just harmonized with you? Why bother us? Water Depth said. I find it strange too. Gu Fei said. What's the name of the person you're talking about? Water Depth asked. Hongchen Yixiao. Gu Fei replied. That's strange. I have to ask old Duan. Water Depth said. Well, it's best to call him over. I'll talk to him after you're done. Gu Fei said. Water Depth glanced at Gu Fei's sword that was stabbed into the ground. Are you going to communicate with him through words? Of course. Gu Fei nodded and clenched his fists. It's just body language. Butterfly knot, like this, like this, like this. Chapter 538. After Water-Breaking Arrow left Shady City, he also plunged into the forest, heading towards Extreme Arctic's reserved area with ease. He had done his best to help the Guild of Extreme Frost improve. Although there was still a huge gap from the forest battle he had hoped for, he had already expected this situation, and he never expected these players to reach that level. After all, everyone was just here to have fun in the game, not to be trained. Right now, because of the novelty, anticipation, and yearning for victory, they had a certain amount of motivation, but this motivation could disappear at any time. Water-Breaking Arrow only hoped that during this period of motivation, he could help these guys improve, and give them an advantage in the forest PK for a period of time. At the moment, the effects were quite obvious. At least the Breaking Water Arrow helped them get rid of a lot of very obvious bad habits, and taught them many good habits that they should have. But from these aspects, the players of Extreme Frost already knew the details of PvP that others didn't know. Their ability was already above the average player. I've taught them everything that can help them, the rest are still not suitable for the game. It's enough for them to practice on their own from now on. Now that Little Five and Drunk Qianli have begun a direct confrontation, it seems like it's time to say goodbye to Water Depth. Water-Breaking Arrow was thinking about this, when he suddenly received a message from Water Depth asking where he was. Coming over. Water-Breaking Arrow replied, not thinking much of it. Every day at this time, he would be in the forest with the big guy, so it was normal for Water Depth to ask. Oh, waiting for you. Water Depth replied simply, and attached his coordinates. Water Depth was actually one of the people he had taught his skills to, and was also one of the best in his heart. He was smart, had a strong ability to accept, and knew how to draw inferences about other things from one instance. He was able to quickly integrate what Water-Breaking Arrow proposed into the game, and in addition, he was much more skilled in the game than Water-Breaking Arrow. He could combine some of the techniques and rules in the game, and put what Water-Breaking Arrow taught to good use. At times like this, Water-Breaking Arrow had to learn from him. Furthermore, Water Depth treated his friends well, and Water-Breaking Arrow liked this friend a lot. Deep in the forest, Water-Breaking Arrow finally saw the figure of Water Depth, and at the same time, saw the person beside him. His black mage robe fell to the ground, and his dark purple longsword was stabbed straight into the ground in front of him. The glow of the sword didn't dim at all in the forest where the light was the weakest. This guy found us so quickly. Breaking Water Arrow was a little surprised that Gu Fei acted so quickly. It seemed that this guy was still communicating with Yi Xiaowu not long ago. In the blink of an eye, he was already waiting for him in the forest. He thought that Qianli would be a little conflicted because of his relationship with Deepwater and the others. Even if he wanted to fight, he wouldn't come to extreme cold. Now he realized that he was wrong. This drunk Qianli was very determined. Such worldly things didn't seem to affect his actions at all. He didn't waver at all. Look, not only did he not avoid water depth, but he also stood with water depth and waited for me. While they were deep in thought, the breaking water arrow had already arrived before them. You really have guts. He clearly saw me standing here, but he didn't even hesitate to walk over. Gu Fei said. Hey! I said I'd go first. Water depth hurriedly said. He was really afraid that Gu Fei would immediately use body language to communicate. Breaking water arrow only smiled. I'm here to find water depth, why should I be afraid? Okay, you two go first. Gu Fei nodded. Breaking water arrow looked at water depth. It seems like you already know. Water depth nodded, but I don't understand what you guys are thinking. It's very simple. Because of him, you and your guild have been treated unfairly. We just want to make it up to you. Breaking water arrow said. Is this what you've been doing? Water depth asked. Yes. Water breaking arrow nodded. Even though it's only a few techniques, and I can't guarantee that with these, you'll definitely be able to obtain the final victory in the battle for the main city. But at the very least, your PK level in the forest has greatly improved. I'm sure you've seen this point clearly. Water breaking arrow said. Water depth nodded, that's right, you've helped us a lot. Moreover, this help, unless it's you, normal people can't provide it. Breaking water arrow only smiled. But water depth suddenly changed the topic, even though it's with good intentions. Have you guys ever thought that others might refuse your good intentions? You'll refuse? Breaking water arrow didn't understand. No. Depth said, but, you guys haven't even asked us. Even if we asked, you wouldn't refuse. Breaking water arrow said. But at least I have the right to choose. I don't need this kind of forced will. In reality, there are already too many things I can't do. Right now, it's just a game. I insist on absolute freedom. I don't need other people to make decisions for me. Water depth said. Wow, water depth, I didn't know you were this deep. Gu Fei was surprised. Of course, I'm a man of character. Water depth replied. Gu Fei's hand twitched. He almost communicated with water depth through body language. Breaking water arrow fell into silence. After a while, he looked at water depth and said, then I'm really sorry. If there's a next time, I'll remember to ask you for your choice. As for this time, I came here today to say goodbye to you. I think my help to you guys is almost over. Thank you for your help, although you didn't ask me if I needed it, then, take care in the future. Breaking water arrow said. I will. As for you, take care now. Water depth nodded and glanced at Gu Fei. It's your turn. Where's Hongchen Yixiao? Gu Fei never procrastinated. When it was his turn, he immediately went straight to the point. Then you should ask him. Breaking water arrow smiled. As someone who had fought with Gu Fei before, he was still so calm when facing him again. Breaking water arrow was the first person Gu Fei had met so far. Even someone like 100 Lives strategist would have a shadow after fighting with Gu Fei. Because even though they were both kung fu experts, Gu Fei gave these people the same shock, and the shock was even deeper. That was a huge and frightening gap that only they, the experts, could understand. As for ordinary players who were not experts, they would often think of leveling up, strengthening equipment, and honing their skills to take revenge. But look at the Encyclopedia of Classics. After fighting with Gu Fei for 2 rounds, he no longer harped on the resentment that had accumulated for many years. This was a profound understanding of consciousness, a high-level understanding. Gu Fei suddenly raised his finger. Breaking water arrow didn't want to wait for Gu Fei to make a move before dodging. He knew that Gu Fei's attack wasn't the scariest part. The scariest part was the follow-up move that followed after the fast move. The rhythm of changing moves often gave people the illusion that it was faster. Breaking Water Arrow knew how hard it was to deal with this. He also knew that Gu Fei didn't stand here to chat with him. Seeing Gu Fei stretch out his finger, he immediately dodged sideways like a fish, smoothly crouching on the ground, and then with a roll, he had already dodged behind a tree. Awesome! Deep Waters, who hadn't left yet, admired Breaking Water Arrow's smooth movement. After a while, he spat out these two words. Gu Fei was also startled for a while. In the end, he said, "Why are you running? I haven't prepared to make a move yet." Gu Fei's finger had indeed moved, but what was wrong with casually moving while standing? He couldn't help but admire Breaking Water Arrow's sharp eyes. Such a small movement didn't escape his eyes. At the same time, he also couldn't help but admire his sensitivity. "I only raised my finger, does he need to dodge so quickly?" Breaking Water Arrow didn't make any sound behind the tree. He wouldn't expose himself so easily. In the forest, he was the expert. Making full use of the terrain, Breaking Water Arrow believed that Gu Fei wouldn't be his opponent. "Come out, I know you're behind me." Gu Fei strode forward and kicked the tree twice. Breaking Water Arrow, who was behind a tree, smiled slightly. Sure enough, although Qianli was good at fighting, he was still a newbie in this forest environment. He didn't even notice that he had dodged behind the tree. He immediately took advantage of the tree's blind spot and continuously changed hiding places. "Come out!" Gu Fei suddenly leaned down and slashed at the lower part of Breaking Water Arrow's body. As a result, this slash naturally hit the air. There was no one behind the tree. "Huh? Where is he?" Gu Fei was surprised. Deep Waters was also surprised. He knew that this was what Breaking Water Arrow had always emphasized to them: when fighting in the forest, they had to pay attention to their blind spots. Their own and the enemy's. It was relatively easy to grasp one's own blind spot. But to accurately judge the enemy's blind spot, it required incomparably rich experience. It had to be known that if there was a slight error in judgment, you could be exposed in the process of using the blind spot to cover up. Even if it was just a finger, that already revealed your position. What cover was there to speak of? Breaking Water Arrow hiding behind the tree, Deep Waters predicted that he wouldn't really hide behind the tree. He would definitely use Gu Fei's blind spot to switch to a position that Gu Fei couldn't see. However, Deepwater didn't expect the water-breaking arrow to switch positions without him noticing. In that instant, the water-breaking arrow had actually managed to locate both of their blind spots at the same time. This drunken Qianli's undefeatable legend might really have been broken by old broken water in the forest. Deep Waters suddenly had this kind of premonition. Gu Fei had already stood up again at this time. Holding the Night Streamer's sword in his hand, he had no idea where Breaking Water Arrow was hiding. The dense forest in front of him suddenly seemed so vast. Chapter 539. Gu Fei focused on his left and right. He didn't discover anything, nor did he feel any killing intent. But this didn't mean that water-breaking arrow had already left or wasn't paying attention to him. Gu Fei knew that water-breaking arrow also had this knowledge. He knew that a professional like Gu Fei could rely on his senses to find a person's location. However, the range of his senses wasn't very large. No matter what, it couldn't be compared to the shooting range of a sharpshooter. Water-breaking arrow could completely hide in a place where Gu Fei couldn't sense his position and quietly observe him. Helpless, Gu Fei could only focus his attention on his ears. He hoped to be able to hear the slight sound that water-breaking arrow made as he walked. The ground in the forest was covered with broken branches and leaves. It wasn't easy to hide the sound of footsteps. "Idiot, over here!" A sudden roar startled Gu Fei. Although water-breaking arrow was an enemy, he wasn't the kind of guy who would spout vulgarities. Looking in the direction of the sound, Gu Fei realized that he had misunderstood. This was Extreme Frost's training ground. And in the direction of the sound, there was a group of people setting up traps. In any case, they were dealing with NPCs, so they weren't afraid of scaring the monsters with their loud noises. One group of people shouted at each other without holding back. The word idiot was their team leader directing a member of the team to move. This forest wasn't quiet at all. Wanting to hear water-breaking Arrow's footsteps was really wishful thinking. Just as Gu Fei was feeling troubled, he saw Water Depth suddenly wave his hand in that direction. The messy group of people suddenly quieted down. After looking in that direction and nodding their heads, they suddenly disappeared. Not only that, after a short while, even some of the more distant and vague noises had already stopped. Gu Fei was startled. He understood that Water Depth had understood his difficulties and helped him clear the area. He hurriedly looked at him with gratitude. Water Depth seemed to be busy sending messages and didn't notice Gu Fei's gratitude. Gu Fei also didn't say anything else. He once again focused his attention and carefully listened to the movements around him. Silence. There was not a single sound. It was deathly silent. Gu Fei believed that in this environment, as long as the water-breaking arrow made a sound, it would not escape his ears. As he thought about it, he slowly closed his eyes. This was to focus all his attention on his hearing. He didn't want his sight to distract him at all. Pa! Suddenly, a sound entered his ears. Gu Fei, who was concentrating on his hearing mode, instantly determined the direction of the sound. Opening his eyes, he didn't take a second look. Raising his hand and pointing with a shio sound, he had already floated away in an instant. Immediately following that, he looked around, thinking that he would definitely be able to find the water-breaking arrow's silhouette. Unexpectedly, what he saw was a short arrow flying towards him. This arrow came too suddenly. In his panic, Gu Fei had no time to block it with his sword, so he could only move sideways to avoid it. He dodged the first arrow, but the second arrow was already rushing towards the position where he had dodged. Once again, Gu Fei twisted his body and dodged it. Like this, he shifted his feet and continuously turned 3 rounds. He could see the short arrows brushing past Gu Fei's body one after another. Pooh! The 4th arrow. In the end, Gu Fei still wasn't able to continue dodging. In the path where he was turning, a tree suddenly appeared to block his way. If he continued to turn, he would only crash into the tree. This sudden interception broke Gu Fei's rhythm. However, the opponent's shooting rhythm was still so stable. There was no doubt that this arrow would hit its target. Gu Fei, who was hit by the arrow, took advantage of the momentum and flipped backwards. Both of his feet were still firmly planted on the ground. Immediately after, an arrow flew past Gu Fei's face. Gu Fei used one hand to push off the ground, and his body bounced back like a spring. Taking advantage of the momentum, he once again turned in the opposite direction. As a result, the opponent's attack suddenly stopped. Gu Fei didn't dare to relax. He quickly took a step forward and hid behind the tree. The injury from the arrow just now wasn't light. Among the 5 consecutive arrows shot by Breaking Arrow, the 4th arrow was a sniper shot. Moreover, it was just in time to catch up with Gu Fei's rhythm. At this moment, it was destroyed by the tree, this guy. Hiding behind the tree, Gu Fei had already taken out a piece of bread and was eating it. In battle, he didn't actually want to replenish his mana, but instead wanted to replenish his health. This was also the first time in Gu Fei's PK career. He discovered that Breaking Arrow really couldn't be underestimated. In this forest, he had many advantages over Gu Fei. It was almost like Gu Fei using Kung Fu to bully ordinary people. Just now, the first "pa" that Gu Fei heard wasn't because Breaking Arrow's figure was exposed. This guy also noticed that the surrounding environment had suddenly become quiet. He immediately used this method to test the waters and lead Gu Fei to the most advantageous position for his attack. The first "pa" was because Breaking Arrow deliberately shot the arrow into the tree. And after that, with Gu Fei's continuous dodging methods, Gu Fei believed that Breaking Arrow wasn't an immortal. Even this was within his expectations. But when Gu Fei's rhythm was disrupted while he was dodging, he immediately seized the opportunity to deliver a sniper shot. This ability to seize opportunities was truly worthy of praise. In Gu Fei's kung fu terms, at that moment, Gu Fei accidentally revealed a flaw, and the water-breaking arrow immediately seized this flaw. Unfortunately, his attack power was limited. If his attack power was at the level of an instant kill like Gu Fei's, this opening just now would have already determined Gu Fei's life and death. So even though Gu Fei managed to preserve his life and was eating bread behind the tree, he wasn't happy in the slightest. For him, he had already lost a move just now. He could still continue, but because this was in the game. In the real world, he was now a half-dead man. If he were to be left here, he might die from excessive blood loss in a short while. What a pity. Breaking Arrow, who was hiding somewhere, felt that it was a pity that he wasn't able to kill Gu Fei. He had already done everything he could. The fourth arrow was a sniper shot and the fifth arrow was a powerful strike. Unfortunately, Gu Fei's reaction speed was too fast. Under these circumstances, he was still able to dodge the fifth arrow. And looking at his subsequent movements, even if Breaking Arrow had another arrow, he wouldn't be able to hit him. One arrow to lure the enemy, 5 arrows in a row, but still only one arrow hit. Too scary. Breaking Arrow discovered that even though he had the advantage, it wasn't that easy to take down Gu Fei. The key point was because this was the game. If it was in reality and he had a gun in his hand, Breaking Arrow sighed. He lightly pinched the quiver and filled it with arrows. Everything was done carefully and didn't make a single sound. At the same time, he continued to pay attention to Gu Fei's movements. He had to keep a distance from Gu Fei. Because he knew that when a warrior's martial arts reached a certain level, they could sense the location of people who were paying attention to them. He didn't expect that this Qianli had such a high level of martial arts at such a young age. He didn't know what his real name was, but he shouldn't be a nobody. What would this guy do next? From the previous attack, he should have known his approximate position. However, after he hid, he didn't look over here. Could it be that he didn't know? Impossible. With this kind of cultivation, he had shot a total of 5 arrows. It was ridiculous that he couldn't even detect this. He didn't move now because he was waiting for the cooldown of teleportation. That's right, he was preparing to suddenly move to this area like before to catch me off guard. Breaking Arrow nodded. He felt that this deduction wasn't wrong. If this was the case, then the situation was still under his control. As long as he had the initiative, if the first time didn't work, he would try the second time. If the second time didn't work, he would try the third time. Sooner or later, he would fall in this forest. Breaking Arrow thought of this and couldn't help but smile. But then, the smile froze on his face. Because he saw Gu Fei. He didn't show his face to observe like he did, nor did he suddenly teleport to this area like he expected. He just walked out from behind the tree, very simple and very normal. This action was out of Breaking Arrow's expectation. Attack? He asked himself. At this time, the position where Gu Fei appeared was very good. However, he appeared so casually. Naturally, he had nothing to fear. It seemed that he didn't care about his attack at all. Speaking of which, if he didn't choose a bad position and almost hit the tree, even if he used the sniper, it would be useless. There wasn't much time. In this moment of hesitation, Gu Fei immediately approached him. Should he attack or retreat? Breaking Arrow knew that he couldn't wait any longer. If Gu Fei got any closer, he could fall into his perception range at any time. At that time, no matter how deep he hid, he would be discovered as long as he looked at Gu Fei. Then, wouldn't it be fine if he didn't look at him? If he didn't have the confidence to attack, he would be exposed. If he retreated, with Gu Fei's sensitive ears, Breaking Arrow was also afraid of being exposed in this forest environment. In the end, he had this idea of continuing to hide. If he could hide, he would think that he wasn't here. If he was exposed, there was no difference between immediately moving or moving now. Breaking Arrow finally made up his mind. He stopped observing Gu Fei and retracted his gaze. With his back facing the direction where Gu Fei came from, he carefully hid behind the tree. Watching the battle from the side, Deepwater was amazed at Gu Fei's skill in dodging the arrows. At this time, he was also very surprised at his rash action of walking out from behind the tree. From Deepwater's point of view, fighting in the forest was all about keeping the enemy in the open and hiding in the dark. Whoever was exposed first would lose. This was the style that Deepwater was used to. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew that Gu Fei was a powerful expert, Shui would have long since given him the word idiot. But this method was used by Gu Fei after all, so Deepwater couldn't comment on it. When it came to fighting, this guy had a lot of experience. Just as Deepwater was about to continue watching the battle with a humble attitude, he saw Gu Fei wave the dark moonlight sword and yell, "Breaking Arrow, come out and fight me to the death." Fuck. Deepwater swung his arm in Gu Fei's direction. So this was his tactic. Deepwater's face was full of tears. This was simply not putting his opponent in his eyes. Sure enough, this wasn't a method that just anyone could use. But the problem was that Gu Fei was clearly in a difficult situation when dodging the arrows. How could he come out so confidently in such a short time? He really was an expert. Chapter 540. Gu Fei's shout also startled Breaking Arrow, who was hiding behind the tree. He almost thought that Gu Fei had seen him and was challenging him, so he almost took a step forward. Luckily, he reacted quickly and quickly judged the direction and distance of Gu Fei from the sound. There was no reason for Gu Fei to have seen him from that position. The tree that Breaking Arrow chose was thick and big. He thought it was safe enough, but now he felt uneasy and quickly crouched down. There was also a bunch of bushes under the tree. Breaking Arrow crouched down, so even if Gu Fei walked next to the tree, he would have to pay special attention to find him. Don't forget that Breaking Arrow was wearing camouflage, which was suitable for hiding in this kind of environment. The sound of Gu Fei's footsteps was very clear. The dead leaves and branches on the ground were stepped on by him, which did not conform to the rules that Breaking Arrow believed in when fighting in the jungle. It looked powerful and arrogant, but this way of doing it would only make him die faster. Breaking Arrow muttered in his heart. Whether it was to increase his confidence, even he himself could not tell. The sound of footsteps suddenly stopped, and Breaking Arrow's heart tightened. Gu Fei stopped, which meant that he had found something, but his position should not have found him. Breaking Arrow's ability to recognize position by sound was not necessarily worse than Gu Fei's. Besides, he also had many skills that Gu Fei did not know. For example, he already knew the distance between Gu Fei's original position and his current position, and Gu Fei's footsteps were so loud, he could roughly judge where Gu Fei had moved to by silently counting Gu Fei's footsteps. No, he should not have found me, he is at least 20 meters away from my position. Breaking Arrow thought. Then why did he stop? Breaking Arrow really wanted to poke his head out to take a look, but he was afraid that he would be discovered. While he was hesitating, he suddenly felt the soles of his feet were hot. What's wrong? Breaking Arrow looked down and saw a bright red flame had already risen in the bushes. Fuck! Broken Arrow screamed in his heart. At this moment, he couldn't care less about being exposed. He frantically rolled and crawled to evade. In the end, his buttocks were still struck by the flames. With a chunk of his HP burned away, Broken Arrow escaped from the sea of fire. He immediately saw the figure of Gu Fei waiting a few meters away. I think you've forgotten that I'm a mage. Gu Fei strode forward and chased after him. Breaking Arrow really wanted to cry but had no tears. Indeed, his awareness of Gu Fei had completely stopped at that abnormal skill of slashing and killing. He had completely forgotten that being awesome was one thing, but Gu Fei's main occupation was still a mage. He was a mage who could attack from a long distance like him, and had a larger attack area than him. Moreover, he didn't need to see the target to be able to attack the target. Just now, Gu Fei had stopped in his tracks. Clearly, he had thrown a fire 3,000 layers flames into the thicket. Although he didn't know where the water-breaking arrow was, the fire immediately burned the water-breaking arrow out. Seeing the scene of breaking arrow jumping out from behind the tree with his butt on fire, Deepwater couldn't help but laugh. Although he didn't know where breaking arrow was, he had clearly seen Gu Fei's actions. He had clearly seen the entire process of Gu Fei's spell chant. At that moment, he had secretly wiped away a cold sweat and cried out in shame. Just like breaking arrow, he had completely forgotten that Gu Fei was actually also a mage. A mage who could use this kind of large area of effect spell to directly bombard the surroundings. Only now did he know that Gu Fei's actions weren't rash or disregarding his opponent. Rather, they had overlooked a fact. In fact, he was a mage. Lightning, descend. Seeing that breaking arrow had already been exposed, Gu Fei waved his sword and chanted. The moment the lightning flashed, the forest was illuminated as if it was daytime. Under the lightning, it struck breaking arrow. However, breaking arrow still had some skill. When the light in the forest suddenly brightened, he already knew what was going on and quickly dodged. The lightning practically brushed past his head and landed on the ground, illuminating breaking arrow's small face to become deathly pale. This was the first time someone had dodged Gu Fei's lightning spell. He wasn't too surprised. After all, it took time for lightning to descend from the sky. It wasn't impossible for a player with quick reflexes to dodge it. Gu Fei was quite distressed at the mana he had used. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have used it. Saving it for dual flame flash would have been much better. Still running. Gu Fei saw breaking arrow continue to charge after dodging the lightning, so he hurriedly waved his long sword and chased after him. While running, breaking arrow turned around and shot 2 arrows. He wanted to use this method to disrupt Gu Fei's progress. Actually, as a godly archer, breaking arrow had an advantage in agility compared to Gu Fei. However, the problem was that compared to Gu Fei, his equipment was like a beggar's. There were a few decent pieces that were given to him after joining Extreme Frost. However, compared to Gu Fei's yellow, purple, and purple equipment, it was nothing. His class advantage had been wiped out by his equipment. Gu Fei wasn't any slower than him, and water-breaking arrow knew that even though he was still 10 meters away from Gu Fei, the distance between him and Gu Fei had decreased by 5 to 6 meters. That was the distance of teleportation. Gu Fei didn't even need time to cross that distance, so this distance was negligible. Unfortunately, it was just 2 arrows. Gu Fei casually twisted his body and dodged them. He pointed his sword and his lips trembled. Immediately, a small fireball jumped up from the sword tip and chased after breaking arrow. How is this possible? Deepwater's eyes widened. Gu Fei had already casted a lightning spell and a fireball spell. Both times, there was a detail that Deepwater found inconceivable. Gu Fei didn't even stop casting spells. As he ran, he summoned a lightning fireball and threw it out. This was simply impossible. When casting a spell, the movement of one's feet would definitely be interrupted. In reality, this was only because Deepwater's eyesight wasn't good enough. In the instant that Gu Fei chanted while running, his feet were firmly planted on the ground. However, not only was his chanting fast, but more importantly, his footwork and chanting were seamless. He didn't waste a single second. Fireball, shoot. His footwork was stabilized the moment he said these 3 words. How much time could these 3 words take? Gu Fei's perfect timing to stop when he spat out these 3 words, and then immediately continue. This was also the embodiment of Gu Fei's abnormal coordination. How could a mortal like Deepwater know this? He only thought that Gu Fei was running while chanting a spell, and he was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. The threat of Fireball was naturally far less than that of Breaking Arrow. That wobbly speed made people feel that he might be extinguished before he could catch up to Breaking Arrow. But when Breaking Arrow turned his head to look at the Fireball, he became extremely depressed. Because he had just completely changed directions and flashed behind a tree, preparing to use a blind spot to make a detour and disappear from Gu Fei's eyes. In the end, he saw this wobbly Fireball, which didn't stop playing the water arrow trick in the slightest, continue to tremble and float towards him. Although Fireball wasn't as overbearing as Homing Arrow, it also had a tracking function for a short period of time. This short period of time was enough to be fatal. Breaking Arrow knew that this Fireball wasn't here to attack him, but to guide the way. He led Gu Fei precisely to the direction where he was hiding, and lit up the shortcut to the archer's shooting range. I can't let it go. Breaking Arrow thought like this, and almost without making any adjustments, he nimbly raised his hand and released an arrow. The small Fireball exploded in the air. But at this moment, he saw that Gu Fei's body had already slanted out, pointed his sword, and another Fireball chased after him. Breaking Arrow cried, if this went on, he would definitely be the one to suffer. His crossbow only had 6 bullets, and now there were only 3 left. Although he knew that Gu Fei was an all-agility mage and had little mana, this was just a small Fireball. At any rate, he was a +40 profession mage, and had more ammunition than him. If this went on, he would run out of ammunition, and Gu Fei would continue to lead the way with small Fireballs. At that time, he wouldn't even have the ability to resist. His marksmanship is pretty good. Gu Fei praised sincerely as he chased after him. Breaking Arrow shot down the Fireball with just a raise of his hand. This kind of archery might be done by experts like Yutian Xinming, but it definitely wouldn't be as elegant as Breaking Arrow. Professionals were indeed different. Breaking Arrow wasn't in the mood to pay attention to Gu Fei's praise. Seeing another Fireball coming towards him, he quickly scanned the surrounding terrain and continued to run. Still running, is there any meaning? Gu Fei chased from behind, and was extremely talkative. On this side, Breaking Arrow had long lost his initial calmness, and his heart was full of sorrow. Profession. He actually ignored the opponent's profession during PK. Such a huge mistake. How was it a mistake made by experts in PK? Against a standard mage, Breaking Arrow couldn't use many of his jungle tricks. This was like playing guerrilla warfare in the jungle, but the opponent had the firepower to cover the entire jungle. What was the point of playing guerrilla warfare? Of course, Gu Fei's firepower wasn't so exaggerated that it could cover the entire jungle. However, although he couldn't see Breaking Arrow, he could continue to use AoE spells to attack like a blind cat hitting a mouse. Although Breaking Arrow could continue to move around and shoot arrows at the same time, this kind of insignificant skill was fine against normal mages, but against Gu Fei, wasn't it a joke? He had used 5 consecutive arrows from the best angle, and all the skills he could use, but he still couldn't kill his opponent. What kind of extreme sneak attack could he do? The two of them began to chase each other in the forest. Deepwater was addicted to watching, so of course he wasn't willing to give up. He anxiously continued to be the most loyal spectator, but when he saw the water-breaking arrow taking a roundabout route, he suddenly froze. Paw! A light sound was incomparably clear in the jungle. As expected. Deepwater cried in his heart. It was obvious that Breaking Arrow was no match for Gu Fei in a one-on-one fight, and had actually lured Gu Fei into their extremely cold training area. Although he had already ordered everyone in the guild not to interfere in this PK, the traps set on the ground wouldn't have eyes to recognize people. Breaking Arrow was familiar with the distribution of these traps, so he definitely wouldn't fall for it. That sound just now, that guy probably fell for it. Butterfly knot, yesterday's chapter name was written wrong, was written as this. It's probably because I almost didn't update in time yesterday, so I'm a little nervous. This fully shows that butterfly's psychological quality isn't strong enough, so I specially strengthened my training today. Chapter 541. Deepwater was wondering if Gu Fei had stepped into a trap, but he didn't expect the pa-pa sound of the trap activating to ring out continuously. Deepwater's vision was blocked at this time, so he quickly adjusted his steps and widened his vision. Finally, the scene behind a big tree appeared in front of him. Deepwater's mouth instantly opened wider and wider, and in the surrounding forest, more and more players from extreme coldness poked their heads out and stood up straight. Their expressions seemed to be carved out of the same mold as Deepwater. Their eyes and mouths were wide open, and their faces looked like 3 eggs were stuck on them. Right in front of them, in the trap array that extreme coldness was proud of and prepared to use to dominate Shade City, Gu Fei was dancing crazily as if he had been injected with chicken blood. The pa-pa sound came from Gu Fei's feet. Every step he took would always trigger a trap, but the trap clip that bounced up at high speed was not as fast as Gu Fei's reaction. The tip of his long sword was waiting 3 steps below him. As soon as the trap bounced up, his feet would immediately jump up, and when the trap caught up to his ankle, it would immediately be knocked away by the tip of the sword. Pa-pa, one pa was the sound of the trap bouncing up, and the other pa was the sound of the trap being shot down by Gu Fei. Deepwater really had no words to describe the scene in front of him. This scene evoked a very bad memory in him. The first time he fought with Gu Fei, he heard the trap sound behind him. He excitedly thought that Gu Fei had been stuck in the trap, but when he turned around, he was caught in the nose by the trap that Gu Fei had flicked away, and at this time, Gu Fei's performance was even more abnormal than that day. At this time, he was already deep in extreme coldness trap array. After all, this was not the steps at the entrance of Sunset City's dungeon. The traps were placed there naked. Here, all the traps were hidden underground, and Gu Fei could not predict the location of the traps at all. From the moment he accidentally stepped on the first trap, it was as if he had activated a chain of mechanisms. In order to avoid the first one, he would trigger the second, and after avoiding the second, he would step on the third. Deepwater and the others were dumbfounded. At this time, Gu Fei was also complaining in his heart. At this time, even having an inch of foothold was an extravagant wish for him. Gu Fei did not dare to be careless. The traps had already overwhelmed him, and he had no time to pay attention to where the water-breaking arrow was. After consecutively flicking down a few more traps, finally, when his foot landed, the ground was calm, and nothing broke out of the ground. Gu Fei let out a long breath, but did not dare to be careless. He maintained a posture with one foot on the ground. With the other foot, Gu Fei had to check the ground to see if there were any traps. The surrounding extreme cold players' faces were deathly pale. After that breaking Gu Fei's, Gu breaking, Gu Fei's, death. 10. 17. Someone stammered out this number. Everyone knew what he was talking about. Gu Fei had stepped on 17 traps in a row, but in the end, it was as if nothing had happened to him. 17 traps, all shot down by him with a single sword. Thinking back, from the moment Gu Fei stepped on the first trap until now, it was like a dream. Everyone realized that they could not remember what Gu Fei had done. Because everything had happened too quickly, everyone's brains were echoing with the 2 consecutive pa-pa sounds. The first pa was the sound of a trap being ejected. The second pa was the sound of a trap being shot down. Suddenly, everyone felt that the future of their class was very bleak, very bleak. In this kind of environment, 17 traps in a row had not been able to subdue someone. Was there still a future for this class? Everyone stood in place, stupefied. Even the trees around them were livelier than they were. When the wind blew, they could even make a slight sha-sha sound. Gu Fei did not seem to realize that his perverted actions had created a destructive psychological shadow in the hearts of the surrounding players. At this moment, he was still maintaining the posture of a golden rooster standing on one leg. With one hand holding onto his sword, he poked at the ground, trying to find an empty space where he could rest assured. At this moment, the rustling sound of the wind suddenly grew louder, but it was clear that the wind did not suddenly become fierce. Everyone's hearts moved, and they looked towards the direction of the sound. Breaking arrow. He rushed out from the bushes and pounced on Gu Fei, who was trapped in the trap array. Old broken arrow. The players were crying tears of joy. It was obvious that they viewed the water-breaking arrow as their last hope. They hoped that someone would prove to them that traps had a future, and that they had the ability to defeat any perverted player. In fact, they had forgotten that Breaking Arrow was not a lurker that specialized in playing with traps. You still haven't left. Gu Fei's expression changed. He thought that Breaking Arrow had lured him to this place because he wanted to escape while he was trapped. He didn't think that Breaking Arrow was actually secretly watching from the side, and still harboring killing intent. This Breaking Arrow was much more promising than Gu Fei had imagined. Breaking Arrow did not reply. He was silent, and fiercely pounced towards Gu Fei. He had also stepped into the trap that Gu Fei was trapped in, but every step he took was safe and sound. Old Breaking Arrow, so cool. All the players shouted. The guild leader had instructed them not to interfere in this PK, and they had obeyed. However, in a PK, everyone had their own opinions, and that was fine, right? In this battle, no matter what angle they looked at it from, the players of Extreme Frost would all stand on Breaking Arrow's side. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that the guild leader, Deepwater, was watching from the side, some of them might have already made a move. Even if they didn't openly help, they could still sneak a shot or two in the dark. This was the forte of a lurker. Breaking Arrow rushed over aggressively, but Gu Fei was still standing on one foot, unable to find a foothold. This was exactly the opportunity that Breaking Arrow needed to seize. Dual Flame Flash, dodge. Gu Fei didn't dare move his feet, and could only helplessly defend. His longsword trembled, and a dual flame flash stabbed towards Breaking Arrow. Breaking Arrow did not panic. Seeing the incoming force, he jumped to the side. Gu Fei would never stop in one move, but seeing Breaking Arrow dodge, he could only curse in his heart, motherfucker. Breaking Arrow's jumping position meant that Gu Fei wanted to follow up with a follow-up attack. Not moving his feet was completely out of the question. This guy completely knew that Gu Fei didn't dare to move recklessly. After dodging the sword, Breaking Arrow didn't give way, and continued to pounce. Seeing his stance, Gu Fei actually gave up on using his crossbow as a gun, and came over to play close combat with Gu Fei. Normally, Gu Fei would welcome this, but right now it was a very serious challenge. Even though we often see experts in movies and television beating people up without moving, don't forget that those are all first-rate experts toying with noobs. If it was any random player that Gu Fei picked up, he could obviously do the same, but the person in front of him wasn't an ordinary player. The water-breaking arrow rushed forward and raised his palm to lock onto Gu Fei's throat. This move was very vicious. If it was a real fight, it would definitely be able to break Gu Fei's throat and kill him in one move. Gu Fei didn't dare to be careless, and at the same time he tilted his body to avoid the attack. He used the leg that hadn't had a chance to land, and swept it horizontally towards Breaking Arrow's head. Breaking Arrow arched his body to avoid it, and followed up with a sweeping kick towards Gu Fei's supporting leg. In the end, Gu Fei's leg was even faster. The foot that was sweeping towards his head suddenly changed direction, stepping down on the broken water archer's lowered head. Following that, the broken water archer was almost trampled to the ground. Gu Fei used the force of this step to avoid the sweeping foot with his other leg, and his body had already leapt into the air. Teleportation. In the air, Gu Fei chanted towards the sky, and with a whoosh, he had already appeared in the air. Both of his hands grabbed onto the branch that was hanging in front of him, and with a swing of his body, he had already flipped over. Sorry, I was forced. Gu Fei gestured to Breaking Water Arrow, indicating that he had no choice but to step on Breaking Water Arrow's head under his foot. Once Breaking Arrow heard this, he became even more depressed. It turned out that there were traps in the 2 or 3 moves just now. Obviously, in Gu Fei's previous situation, the single leg that was supporting his balance was the biggest flaw. Gu Fei predicted that Breaking Arrow would quickly attack there, so he beat him at his own game, and swept towards Breaking Arrow's head. That was because he predicted that Breaking Arrow would lower his body to avoid Gu Fei's supporting leg, so Gu Fei conveniently used Breaking Arrow's head as a support. With such a support leg, plus the distance of teleportation, Gu Fei immediately escaped from the trap and climbed up the tree. No matter how powerful Breaking Arrow was, he couldn't fly up the tree, so he quickly pulled out his crossbow and shot again. He thought that perhaps Gu Fei wouldn't be too agile on this branch, but in the end, Gu Fei's martial arts were really solid, and he stood on a branch steadily. Turning left, turning right, Breaking Arrow shot out 6 arrows, but none of them hit. He quickly pulled out the arrow box and buried his head to reload, occasionally looking up at Gu Fei on the tree. He saw Gu Fei take out an apple from his pocket and nibble on it. This was also equivalent to reloading his ammunition. Mana recovery was still a bit slow, especially when Gu Fei couldn't wait for the best recovery time. After taking 2 bites, Breaking Arrow's ammunition was already reloaded, and he raised it again to aim at Gu Fei. Gu Fei helplessly spread his hands towards him. What's the point? You can't hit anyway. Do you really have to shoot all the arrows in your pocket? Breaking Arrow clenched his teeth. This was indeed the case, but, if he didn't shoot, what else could he do? In the end, you still have to play with the gun, then why did you rush over? Gu Fei said. Breaking Arrow didn't answer. In fact, he certainly didn't want to rush over, but how could he have thought that Gu Fei was so abnormal that he couldn't be controlled even after stepping on 17 traps? Gu Fei previously maintained his posture and didn't dare to move, which was no different from falling into a trap, but this was for people like Gu Fei who didn't know. Breaking Arrow, who was completely familiar with the trap array, knew very well that Gu Fei had jumped out of the array after picking 17 traps in a row. If he dared to take 2 steps randomly, he would soon notice. Breaking Arrow rushed up, wanting to force Gu Fei back into the array before he noticed. After all, it was easier to control the opponent's movement in close combat, but who would have thought that Gu Fei could use his head to fly up the tree? Life was really too helpless. Butterfly not, well, the 2 of them have fought for long enough, it's time for a real result. Chapter 542. The shouts and cheers of the extreme cold players came to an abrupt stop as Gu Feifei appeared behind the tree. Everyone returned to the idiotic expression they had when they were admiring Gu Feifei challenging the trap formation a few seconds ago. Each and every one of them opened their mouths and looked up. Climbing up a tree in the game wasn't unusual, but suddenly climbing up a tree in such a tight 1v1 PK match, this was a PK technique that even the players living in the forest hadn't developed yet. How did he do it? Everyone whispered. Some people even simulated it, bending down to let the opponent step on their head to see if it was a quick way to climb up the tree. Reality proved that, not mentioning Gu Fei's teleportation skill, to be able to accurately step on a round head and quickly borrow strength, this was also a technique. Because this step had to be very fast, the 2 sides were fighting, not specially stiffening their necks for support. If you weren't fast enough, if the opponent turned around and dodged, or stepped on too firmly and directly trampled the opponent to the ground, the purpose of borrowing strength wouldn't be achieved. Then they saw Gu Fei elegantly turn around on a single tree to dodge 6 arrows from Breaking Arrow. Everyone became even more silent. Everyone thought that it was unfair to cheer for Breaking Arrow again, the opponent was such a scary guy, asking Old Broken to win was asking too much, they couldn't make things difficult for Old Broken. Although Breaking Arrow knew that it would be difficult to hit Gu Fei even if he continued to shoot, he felt that in this situation, he still had the initiative. Gu Fei was standing on the tree, any slight mistake would cause him to fall or get hit, and he didn't seem to be able to make any threatening attacks against him. Hua! Suddenly there was a flash of light in the sky. Breaking Arrow paused for a moment and quickly dodged. Another bolt of lightning dodged to the side of his feet. Breaking Arrow's face turned pale again. It had only been a few minutes. How could he forget that he was still a mage? Breaking Arrow really wanted to slap himself. Even so, he still had the advantage. The speed of a mage's magic attack couldn't be compared to an archer's arrow, especially when most of them had a bit of a flashy prelude. This was something that Gu Fei couldn't change no matter how strong he was. Water-breaking Arrow judged the situation and immediately raised his head to shoot again without hesitation. The string of the crossbow rattled, and the arrows whizzed through the air. On the tree, Gu Fei was still the same. He turned left, turned right, turned sideways, bent over, and looked as if he could fall at any time, but he did not. Not a single arrow hit its target. Water-breaking Arrow was very patient. He was reluctant to use the sniper because he didn't want Gu Fei to adapt to the speed of the sniper. He wanted to wait for the moment when Gu Fei had a flaw in his dodging to give a sudden attack. Moreover, not using snipe for a long time was also a form of pressure for Gu Fei. If he used it casually, at least he would be able to relax a lot during the cooldown period. Sniping wasn't some high-leveled skill that hadn't been announced yet. The official database had all the data on it, and everyone knew that it normally had a cooldown of 45 seconds. Water-breaking Arrow hoped that Gu Fei's mind would always be in a state of tension, not even giving him this 45 seconds of respite. In the game, it was very difficult to cause physical fatigue, but mental fatigue was exactly the same as in the real world. Right now, Water-breaking Arrow wanted to force Gu Fei's mind to be tired first. Taking out the quiver, loading the arrow, and shooting again. Water-breaking Arrow skillfully performed this set of actions. After loading the arrow, he immediately raised the arrow and shot. Then it was time for Gu Fei to perform. Attacking Water-breaking Arrow also tried to attack Gu Fei by calculating the distance in advance. In the end, he found that Gu Fei's dodging wasn't the kind of dodging that made it impossible for people to aim at him. Instead, he calmly dodged after clearly seeing Water-breaking Arrow's direction of attack. This was undoubtedly a method that could only be used by people with excellent judgment and reaction speed. Water-breaking Arrow tried to use a few tricks to distract Gu Fei's attention, but it didn't work. He found that in Gu Fei's eyes, he didn't seem to see him anymore, but only the crossbow in his hand. Gu Fei was completely focused on where the crossbow was pointing. As for whether Water-breaking Arrow was dead or alive, whether he was lying down or standing, he didn't care. I don't believe that you can keep dodging. Water-breaking Arrow's vigor also came up. Box after box of arrows was shot, but he didn't give up. He shot again and again. Gu Fei would occasionally return one or two spells, such as lightning, area of effect, small fireball, and so on. Water-breaking Arrow dodged and returned fire. Just like this, they maintained a certain distance, going back and forth. Ah! Someone in the audience yawned first. Immediately, it spread like H1N1, and the yawns began to rise and fall. Regarding the PK between the two, the audience had already entered aesthetic fatigue from the initial amazement. If there wasn't a climax soon, everyone was ready to give up on this pit. It's been almost half an hour, right? A guy asked his friend next to him. 24 minutes and 34 seconds. This friend next to him was obviously bored to the point that his balls hurt. He didn't watch the PK anymore and instead looked at the time to play. If this goes on, can there still be a winner? At the beginning, the audience's mentality was the same as Water-breaking Arrow's. They all thought that Water-breaking Arrow had a slight advantage, and that Gu Fei on the tree would make a mistake if he was careless. But, after so long, the facts spoke louder than words. It will. Unexpectedly, there were still people who had such an optimistic attitude. Old Duan's arrows will be shot out sooner or later, right? Hey, don't borrow old Duan's arrows. If he comes to borrow them. This voice quickly spread among the audience. Every player tightly clutched their quiver. Can there be a little change? In the end, there were still people who had some hope for this PK, hoping that there would be a climax. Sigh. Most of the people's faces showed pessimistic expressions. That guy keeps hiding like this, why doesn't he come down? He's probably afraid of the traps on the ground, but he actually doesn't have, shoo. Immediately, someone covered his mouth. Although they hoped that this fight would end soon, in everyone's hearts, the winner was still Water-Breaking Arrow. They didn't want Gu Fei to know this important news. Old Duan might as well just chase up the tree. Someone thought. Halfway up the tree, an area of effect spell coming down, how can he dodge it? Sigh, looks like we can only wait for old Duan to shoot out all his arrows. Everyone sighed deeply. Compared to the audience, Water-Breaking Arrow, who was in the middle of the fight, didn't show any signs of anxiety. It was obvious that his mental fortitude was very strong. More importantly, he didn't treat Gu Fei as a normal person at all. He didn't expect to finish him off in 2 or 3 minutes. This PK is no longer a matter of technique. It's a competition of mental strength. Let's see who can maintain concentration in this kind of situation to the end. I have a greater advantage since I have the initiative. His mental exhaustion is definitely greater than mine. I can't lose. Water-Breaking Arrow encouraged himself. Another 10 minutes passed like this. Water-Breaking Arrow continued to concentrate on this mental battle. Suddenly, he heard Gu Fei speak, breaking the balance of the situation. Why are you only here now? He heard Gu Fei say this. There are many traps in the forest. Be more careful. A voice from behind him replied. Water-Breaking Arrow immediately turned around. He saw a sword demon. He didn't know when, but he was already behind him. The distance between them was less than 3 meters. Water-Breaking Arrow was really too focused. He didn't even notice that someone was already behind him. Your mission. He suddenly heard Gu Fei speak from the tree. Then, he saw Gu Fei stretch his body and elegantly jump down from the tree. After landing firmly on the ground, he happily walked a few steps, not at all afraid of the possible traps on the ground. Although there weren't any, Gu Fei's mentality shouldn't be like this. Water-Breaking Arrow didn't understand. He faintly felt that he thought he had the initiative, but in fact, he was being led by the nose. He thought this was a battle of mental willpower. But in fact, it was more like a game to stall for time. Was all of this just so the sword ghost could complete his daily mission? It really returned to the origin of the genre. This was a game. Breaking Water Arrow looked at Gu Fei, who was pacing back and forth. He suddenly realized that Gu Fei was walking on the same spot that he had walked on before. This guy used spells to attack from the tree, forcing Water-Breaking Arrow to run and dodge. Especially with large area of effect spells, the distance he had to run was very long. And in this process, he actually memorized all the traces Water-Breaking Arrow had walked. At this moment, he only walked to these places. It didn't matter whether there were traps on the ground or not. After a few more glances, Water-Breaking Arrow collapsed again. Gu Fei wasn't taking a walk out of boredom. He was reviewing the places Water-Breaking Arrow had walked. He wanted to find the best position to attack Water-Breaking Arrow. He was actually preparing as if there was no one else around. Was he already regarded as a fish on the chopping board? Gu Fei was a professional in fighting. Naturally, he was very efficient. It didn't take him long to choose a plan. He looked up and found Water-Breaking Arrow looking at him. He turned his head and looked at Sword Demon behind Water-Breaking Arrow. Do you need my help? No one answered. The onlookers couldn't stand it anymore. 2 against 1. Shameless. There was a lot of cursing, but the people involved weren't angry. The sword ghost replied indifferently, no need. Gu Fei replied with an, oh. Then, he stood there motionlessly. Water-Breaking Arrow looked at this and that. Although they were enemies, and although they were the balance breakers that Yi Xiaowu said, Water-Breaking Arrow had a certain understanding of these two guys' characters. He believed that even if the two were to fight 2 against 1, they wouldn't use such tricks to deceive the opponent. Since Sword Demon said, "No need," it seemed that Qianli Drunk wouldn't interfere. It changed to 1 against 1 with Sword Demon. Water-Breaking Arrow turned and looked at Sword Demon. Sword Demon was certainly not as scary as Qianli Drunk, but he also defeated Apple Vinegar. Moreover, the distance between the two was less than 3 meters. At this distance, with the speed of Fog Shadow's surprise attack, even if he knew how to dodge, there was still a lot of suspense. However, the ground was full of traps. This guy would also have misgivings and wouldn't use such a direct attack. Water-Breaking Arrow thought and raised his crossbow again. His hand was still so steady. Sword Demon's figure suddenly disappeared. Water-Breaking Arrow cursed inwardly. When Sword Demon appeared again, he was already in front of him. The daggers in his left and right hand stabbed at him at the same time. Water-Breaking Arrow subconsciously dodged. His heart was full of tragedy. He had miscalculated again. He didn't think that a reliable veteran player like Sword Demon would be so reckless and not consider the existence of the traps on the ground. Chapter 543. Sword Demon felt quite sad at this moment. He didn't expect Water-Breaking Arrow to still be able to react to his attack at such a close distance. Sword Demon already felt that his 2 attacks weren't solid enough. Compared to this specially trained talent, the difference in reaction speed was really hard to make up. Although it didn't cause an instant kill level damage, the impact of Misty Ambush still exploded. Water-Breaking Arrow was hit far away by this attack and was about to fall into the bushes in the blink of an eye. Last time, he had been killed by Gu Fei's sword when he had fallen to the ground in a panic. This time, the tragedy was repeating itself. Water-Breaking Arrow glanced at Gu Fei. At this time, Gu Fei had even put away his sword. Clearly, he was only prepared to watch the duel between him and the sword ghost. Water-Breaking Arrow let out a sigh of relief. 1 attack didn't kill him, so there was still a chance. Water-Breaking Arrow thought and began to pay attention to where he would land in the air. There was a place around him that he could immediately hide. As a result, he immediately knew that this was bad. The place where he was about to fall was a large area of traps. At this time, he had already lost his balance in the air and couldn't adjust his body. If he fell like this, he would definitely be caught in the traps. Everything happened so quickly. Water-Breaking Arrow just finished thinking that this was bad and was already lying on the ground. Branches and leaves flew around under his violent pressure. Pa pa pa, sounds rang out continuously. People like Deepwater, who were experienced and had outstanding judgment, immediately realized that the Water-Breaking Arrow had triggered at least 6 traps. Water-Breaking Arrow lost the ability to move after falling to the ground, but at least he could still use his hands to support himself up. Looking up, Sword Demon was already holding a dagger and walking towards him step by step. His figure gradually disappeared with each step. Stealth. Water-Breaking Arrow was in a trap formation. Even in stealth mode, he would still trigger the traps. However, Sword Demon disappeared and continued to move forward. His figure didn't appear again. There was only one explanation. He didn't fall into the traps. He avoided the traps along the way step by step. This guy. Water-Breaking Arrow realized that Sword Demon was much scarier than he thought. He had ignored the traps on the ground and used Misty Shadow Ambush on himself because he knew that there were no traps at the border. He had used Misty Strike, but he had already anticipated that he wouldn't be able to instantly kill the Water-Breaking Arrow. However, he had also anticipated that the Water-Breaking Arrow wouldn't be able to escape unscathed no matter how powerful it was. Therefore, he had purposely sent the Water-Breaking Arrow into the trap. At this moment, he was able to avoid every trap in the trap array because he also had some understanding of this trap array. He disguised himself as an extreme cold player and mixed into their group. Sword Ghoul wasn't here to be a bystander like Gu Fei. He was very serious about his knowledge of traps and asked for advice. As expected, he should not have underestimated him. Gaming experts were also experts. All experts had one thing in common: they all used their brains. A person who only knew how to use brute force or equipment would never become a true expert. It was too late for water-breaking arrow to sigh. Sword Demon disappeared in front of his eyes. He had no idea where Sword Demon was at. Experts who practiced both internal and external cultivation could rely on their senses to find the location of people who were paying attention to them. Water-breaking arrow was only clear about this. Unfortunately, he wasn't an expert of this level. There were also differences in cultivation. Water-breaking arrow's ability was only enough to have some intermittent intuition. This might be useful in a moment of life and death, but in a situation where the pace was so slow, without Gu Fei's accurate grasp, this intuition was useless. Water-breaking arrow was fully aware of the traps that these people in extreme cold were wearing. He needed at least 10 more seconds to be able to move again. At this moment, Sword Demon might have already reached his side. Water-breaking arrow had no way of defending against this unknown attack. He finally gave up his last attempt to struggle. Today, he had already created enough tragedies. Water-breaking arrow didn't want to continue being a joke. Silence, silence again. That night, the originally bustling forest had welcomed this kind of silence many times, but this time was undoubtedly the quietest. Compared to the previous times where the forest was shocked into silence due to the shocking scene, this time, it was the kind of holding one's breath as they waited for the big ending. There was a real, deathly stillness. This pressure was concentrated on the two people in the field. Water-breaking arrow's mental state was absolutely strong. Under this kind of pressure, he didn't show the slightest hint of fear. Everyone was waiting for Sword Demon to appear, waiting for water-breaking arrow to disappear. Sword Demon finally appeared, but water-breaking arrow didn't immediately disappear. Sword Demon only appeared behind him. Sword Demon's dagger was pointed at his waist. "You lost," Sword Demon said. Water-breaking arrow heard the voice behind him and suddenly turned back. Sword Demon made a sound, but he wasn't dead yet. He thought he still had a chance, but when he turned his head, he found Sword Demon's dagger was already at his waist. It wasn't that he had a chance, but that Sword Demon's dagger didn't even stab him. Water-breaking arrow was a little confused. He looked at Sword Demon. "I owed you a favor before." Sword Demon had already put away his dagger. "Now I've paid it back." Water-breaking arrow was startled. He understood what Sword Demon was referring to. Previously, they had doubts about their purpose in sneaking into extreme cold, causing a lot of trouble. After that, they expressed their apologies. Water Depth had already said this to Water-breaking arrow on their behalf. However, they had already fallen out with each other. Although Water-breaking arrow didn't have the evil intentions that they had imagined, it was still related to them. If it was Water-breaking arrow's way of thinking, it was hard to say whether they owed him a favor or not. "You don't owe me any favors," Water-breaking arrow said. "Whether it's bad or not, that's my opinion. It's not up to you to decide." Sword Demon finished speaking and retreated. "Anyway, I think it's not bad now. So the next time we meet, I won't be merciful." Under everyone's gaze, Water-breaking arrow was originally a god in many people's hearts. At this time, he was completely defeated, and he even wanted to let him go with the excuse of returning a favor. For any self-respecting person, this was worse than death. Leaving under everyone's gaze wasn't an easy thing to do. But Water-breaking arrow didn't seem to care about this at all. He only looked at Sword Demon who already had his back turned to him. "Like this, I feel like I owe you a favor. But, I'm a person who distinguishes between public and private affairs. When I need to kill you, I won't use this method to return the favor. That's your business. Do whatever you want. Sword Demon didn't turn back. Water-breaking arrow looked at him, then looked at Gu Fei. He actually nodded his head, then turned around and walked out of the trap. I'm sorry. Sword Demon walked in front of Gu Fei. You worked so hard, but I let him go. What are you saying? Gu Fei was angry. What do you mean by worked hard? It was just a slight effort. The happiest person in the crowd was actually Water Depth. He laughed and jumped in front of the two. He patted Sword Demon hard and said, "Ha ha ha, you really are a person who distinguishes right from wrong. I admire you more and more." Gu Fei squinted at him. You just think that both sides are your acquaintances. If you really fight to the death in your territory under your eyes, you'll be in a dilemma. So, this is the best ending, right? You actually saw through it. You're really not simple. Water Depth began to pat Gu Fei hard again. Gu Fei helplessly looked at him in disdain and looked at Sword Demon. When are you going to do your quest? There's no rush. Now that we're entangled, we'll have plenty of chances to meet in the future, right? Sword Demon said. Be careful, this guy is still very hard to deal with. Gu Fei said. Yeah. Sword Demon definitely agreed with this point. Just based on the fact that he was able to survive Misty Shadow's ambush, he was far above normal players. The players in Extreme Cold were still a bit confused. It was already strange that the guild leader didn't let everyone participate in this PK. After the PK, he let Old Duan leave, but was very close to his two opponents. Everyone was even more confused. Just as they were about to ask, the entire guild suddenly received a system notification: player Broken Water Arrow has left the guild. The entire guild was in an uproar. Although Broken Water Arrow had only joined the guild for a short period of time, he was everyone's focus. He wasn't just some random passerby player. As for his exit, everyone thought that something big had happened. Those in the group chat, those in Deep Water's private chat. Those who had just witnessed the PK all gathered around. They believed that Old Duan's exit had something to do with this PK. Water Depth had no choice but to leave the two of them. He was surrounded by a group of players and asked all sorts of questions. Being a guild leader really isn't easy. Sword Demon said with deep emotions. Thinking back to his era, it was nothing more than being surrounded by people in the channel or voice chat. That was already annoying enough. Now that Water Depth was surrounded by a group of people and asked questions, Sword Demon suddenly felt a chill down his spine. The scale of the guild in the parallel world was much larger than in the previous game. Moreover, he needed to communicate with his brothers face to face. Perhaps he should be glad that he didn't manage to create a guild this time. Water Depth's current situation was a bit too horrible to look at. TSK, this encirclement, it's such a pity that I didn't use double flame flash. Gu Fei also muttered at the side. Sword Demon sweated profusely when he heard this. If Water Depth was in Gu Fei's place and used double flame flash, with his slashing skills, that one attack would probably kill 20 people. Broken Water Arrow, who had left the forest, immediately contacted Yi Xiaowu. I just met Qinli Drunk and Sword Demon. I lost to them. How could it be such a coincidence? Yi Xiaowu said. That guy, he ran into the forest to wait for me. Broken Water Arrow said. This guy. Yi Xiaowu muttered. Gu Fei should be too embarrassed to run into Water Depth and make things difficult for Broken Water Arrow. This favor problem was originally analyzed by Yi Xiaowu and Broken Water Arrow together, but they didn't expect this guy to completely not play his cards according to common sense. How are you now? Yi Xiaowu asked. Not dead. Broken Water Arrow said so, but he didn't want to be entangled in the situation on his side anymore. He turned to ask Yi Xiaowu, where are you? I'm on the way to Whitestone City. Yi Xiaowu replied. Chapter 544. The distance between Shady Grove City and Baishur City was only the distance between two cities, so it wasn't easy to walk. It was mainly because of the dense forest surrounding Shady Grove City, where countless cute lurkers lived. Especially as time went by, more and more players reached level 40, and the lurkers here became more and more prosperous. It was the peak time of the day when the number of online players on the server was at its peak. In the forest, there was a trap every 3 steps. Yi Xiaowu's unparalleled gaming knowledge was useful even at this time. Although he didn't know how the players in Shady Grove City divided up this large forest, at least he knew the distribution of monsters in the forest. No matter how lawless the traps set by the players were, they wouldn't be thrown in a place where there were no monsters, right? After going around and around, a level 36 lone cleric walked out of the forest of Shady Grove City without any trouble. This was only the second time in Shady Grove City's history that this had happened. The first time was also created by Yi Xiaowu when he came. Walking out of the forest and along the flat road, Yi Xiaowu couldn't change the fact that he was short-legged no matter how rich his knowledge was. When he arrived at Baishur City, it was really late. For example, Gu Fei had already gone offline. Yi Xiaowu didn't stop and went straight in the direction of the knight's camp when he arrived at Baishur City. In the knight's camp of Baishur City, Silvermoon sat alone on a step in the camp. How many days had he been trapped here? He couldn't remember himself. He only knew that after he was killed on the way to Shady Grove City, he couldn't leave the camp again. As soon as he returned that day, he found the figures of Yun Zhongmu and the others waiting outside the camp. How could Silvermoon not know their intentions? These people had been waiting here in advance, and Silvermoon already had a faint feeling that something was wrong. After that, he tried to provoke Unsworn Sword to help him, but he received a cold reply. Then, the message he sent actually got a system response saying, the other party refuses to send messages from strangers. At that time, Silvermoon felt like he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. He really couldn't think of any help he could find. Silvermoon wasn't stupid. She suddenly realized that she had been set up again, and this time, the scheme was quite vicious. She wasn't simply sent to the respawn point for Cloud Twilight and the others to kill. More importantly, she had been completely destroyed. She had no way of retreating or reinforcements at all times. The boss of Reigning the Four Seas had deleted her from his friend list, and Silvermoon had lost all hope. But what about her teammates? Although Silvermoon had already abandoned those guys on the way, he still wanted to thicken his skin and give it a try. In the end, before he could even send a message, he received one after another members of the mercenary group leaving the group. Some of them even left him with contempt and curses. In an instant, Silvermoon's Silver Moon mercenary group became isolated. Silvermoon wanted to grab the person to chat privately, but it was as if she was looking for the sword of no oath. All the messages were, the other party rejected messages from strangers, child elite group. Silvermoon gritted her teeth. Although she couldn't figure out how the other party had planned it, she was certain that it was definitely their doing. This scumbag would always abandon his companions at a critical moment. He still didn't realize that his actions had caused him to be isolated, and was still resenting others for setting him up. I can only rely on myself. Silvermoon thought for a whole hour, but couldn't think of anyone else he could use. He even thought of compromising to Boundless Mang, but he gave up in the end. It wasn't that this scumbag had any bottom line, but he really understood Boundless Mang. If he went to her to repent now, he would only get a face full of spit. Without any friends he could use, Silvermoon thought of compromising with the enemy. Cloud Twilight had almost fallen asleep guarding the night camp. Silvermoon smiled amiably and took the initiative to greet everyone. Silvermoon knew that a group like Cloud Twilight would definitely value the King's Sword in his hands. Perhaps the reason why these guys were so persistent in chasing him was because of this King's Sword. Silvermoon wanted to use this as a bargaining chip to resolve this matter peacefully with Cloud Twilight. Slowly, with a smile on his face, he told her his idea. Silvermoon's eloquence was undoubtedly exceptional. Things like, a smile dispels grudges, a real man should look at the bigger picture, if the two of us join hands, the world will be within our grasp, all kinds of historical allusions, all kinds of mushy compliments, all kinds of pleasing words that could be thought of, all of them were pushed forward, like a sugar-coated bullet bombarding cloud morning. After speaking until he was at a loss for words, Silvermoon took a huge risk and stepped out of the revival point to express his sincerity. He wanted to get closer to Cloud Twilight. At this moment, Cloud Twilight suddenly became excited. Silvermoon thought that his words were effective, and hurriedly reached out to shake Cloud Twilight's hand. However, the hand that Cloud Twilight handed over was also carrying a dagger. That dagger was so vicious that it wanted to stab Silvermoon's intestines out. Cloud Twilight's group of brothers instantly surrounded Silvermoon. He had nowhere to retreat, and was heavily surrounded. This was a brutal killing in the truest sense of the word. These guys had been waiting for this moment for a long time. They couldn't bear for it to end so quickly. Everyone wanted to properly enjoy this moment. Apart from Cloud Twilight's dagger at the beginning, everyone else took off their equipment and relied on the lowest damage they could muster to surround Silvermoon and beat him to death. At this moment, Silvermoon regretted her opinion of Yun Jongmu, regretted her risky actions, regretted that she had added points to her physique. This beating continued without end, continuing for several minutes. Even so, there were still many people who didn't manage to hit him, and in the end, they started arguing with their own people. Before dying, Silvermoon was even spat on by Cloud Twilight. "Damn you, you talk so much." After dying, Silvermoon was filled with grief and indignation, but he didn't dare to leave the revival point. He stood in the circle and spat at these guys for a while, before going offline helplessly. Silvermoon had already realized that Cloud Twilight's hatred towards him was beyond material. It was completely mental, and he definitely wouldn't let it go after killing him once. The next day, Silvermoon carefully looked around the revival point, but he didn't discover anything. There was no way Silvermoon would be willing to hide in the revival point forever. Although he knew it was dangerous, he had no choice but to take this risk. Thus, he gathered his courage and walked out of the revival point. Safe. He was actually safe. Silvermoon, who was prepared to immediately retreat to the revival point, didn't receive any attacks. Silvermoon was pleasantly surprised. However, just as he took 3 steps away from the revival point, a large number of hidden thieves appeared. His path of retreat was blocked, and they surrounded and beat him up. Silvermoon fought back bravely, but this time, Cloud Twilight's group of brothers used the same trick again. They stripped off their equipment and wanted to slowly torture Silvermoon. However, some people went a little overboard. Not only did they remove their weapons, they actually stripped off their entire bodies to take advantage of Silvermoon. How could Silvermoon's attack power be child's play when he had the level 70 Sword of Kings? One of the naked thieves was actually killed by Silvermoon. This naturally enraged the crowd. Amidst shouts of, "Grandson, you dare to fight back," the beating became even more inhumane. Before Silvermoon died, he lost count of how much saliva was splashed on his body. Everyone's punches and kicks weren't enough, and they even had to splatter on him. Silvermoon finally knew fear. He didn't dare to take any more risks. He was afraid that next time, these guys would even use their noses and snot on him. After not going online for a few days, Silvermoon hoped to wear down these guys' patience. After that, he didn't dare to openly leave the revival point. He changed his equipment and wore a mask. After everything was done, he took 3 steps out of the revival point and was surrounded and beaten up inhumanely. Silvermoon cried. He knew that it was impossible for him to leave just like that. Let's waste time. Then let's waste time. Silvermoon gritted his teeth and began to compete with these guys in terms of patience. He took out a stool from somewhere in the revival point and sat there every day, leisurely basking in the sun. Cloud Twilight's brothers were naturally unhappy, but the people at the resurrection point couldn't even spit on them. Silvermoon's "I don't have you in my eyes" expression was a great provocation to them. Silvermoon finally let out a small sigh of relief. After thinking about it, he felt that his actions were really unwise. Only by wearing down these guys' patience would he have a chance to get out of this predicament. Being so impulsive and provoking them, wasn't he just making things difficult for himself? After thinking it through, Silvermoon didn't do such a thing again. He began to deliberately control his online time. Every day, he would come online and show his face for a while, then he would go offline. In the end, the situation became worse and worse. Originally, it was just Yun Jong-moo's people. After a few days, Silvermoon didn't expect his old colleague and subordinate, Lan Yi, to bring people to find him. Of course, Lan Yi didn't come to save him. That day, when he saw him, he fiercely criticized Silvermoon's despicable past. At that time, Silvermoon hurriedly went offline, but Lan Yi's mouth didn't stop. The next day, when Silvermoon came online again, he found that a lot of people he didn't know were looking at him with disdain. Outside the revival point, there were a lot of people who wanted to kill him. Silvermoon cried once more. Silvermoon also thought of other ways. He used some methods to contact some professional players in the gaming studios to help him get out of this predicament. Unfortunately, he was really notorious now. He was already known as the #1 scum in the parallel world. With such a big reputation, even gaming studios wanted to avoid him. People in gaming studios also wanted to earn money. Their own image was very important. How could they stand on the side of the #1 scum? Of course, if Silvermoon was willing to pay a high price, there would also be people who would take the risk anonymously for the sake of benefits. However, the problem was that Silvermoon wasn't Slim Waist Dancer. Apart from being a scum, he was just a normal player. There was no way he could spend a lot of money. Give up the king's sword. This was Silvermoon's final bargaining chip. He believed that the value of this thing was enough to drive a lot of people. However, this was Silvermoon's bottom line when he had no other way. After being in this state for so long, Silvermoon had started to consider this bottom line more and more. But in the past 2 days, a guy called Water Breaking Arrow suddenly wrote in. These letters were not from the game. Silvermoon had no chance to access the game mailbox at all. Fortunately, he went SOS everywhere and left a lot of his contact information. As a result, the most he received were the disdain and abuse from players in the parallel world. Just when Silvermoon was about to give up, he suddenly received a letter from this player called Water Breaking Arrow. Butterfly Knot, are there any readers who like Silvermoon? Chapter 545. Silvermoon didn't pay much attention to Water Breaking Arrow's first letter because it wasn't the first time he received such a letter. He had once been overjoyed, but after contacting her online, he quickly realized that it was just a trick to lure him out of the resurrection point. Fortunately, the experienced Silvermoon was smart and cautious. That time, he managed to crawl back to the safe zone of the resurrection point with one last breath. So although Silvermoon saw and replied to Water Breaking Arrow's first letter, he didn't pay much attention to it. He hadn't eliminated the possibility that it was a trap. Even after receiving the second letter, Silvermoon still didn't let his guard down. He didn't receive Water Breaking Arrow's third letter. Just as he was praising his own judgment, thinking that he had seen through his opponent's trick and made him give up, he received a letter from another person. He called himself Hongchen Yixiao and said that he was Water Breaking Arrow's companion. He said that he would personally go to White Stone City to help Silvermoon escape. Silvermoon still wasn't too excited because it wasn't the first time he had to talk to people face to face. He had talked to people face to face many times. However, Silvermoon was a master at tricking people. These small characters really couldn't trick him out of the resurrection point. This guy has contacted me 3 times in a row. This is unprecedented. Silvermoon muttered. He suddenly had a little hope for this guy this time, so he went online at the appointed time. Not long ago, he received a system message from Hongchen Yixiao requesting to be his friend. After confirming, they had officially made contact. The other party clearly said that he was heading to the knight's camp in Whitestone City. "I'll be waiting," Silvermoon replied calmly. It was true that he had hope, but it was only 1%. The remaining 90% was still full of caution. "I'm here." Silvermoon, who was waiting in the camp, suddenly received the message. He immediately stood up and looked at the entrance of the knight's camp. "Who is it?" Silvermoon asked. This was the resurrection point, the offline area, and the safe area. There were many people coming and going, so the entrance was never empty. "Waving," the other party replied. Silvermoon immediately saw a player who looked like a priest standing at the entrance waving his arms. Silvermoon immediately used Identify. Level 36, Priest. "Fuck." Silvermoon cursed. He couldn't be bothered to appraise the equipment anymore and immediately stopped. In the game, having a high level didn't necessarily mean you were amazing, but an amazing player had to have a high level. Although it was not easy to widen the gap between levels in parallel worlds, Silvermoon did not believe that a rookie who had not even advanced his occupation could be a great immortal. He could not be bothered with this person anymore and was ready to log off. "Can you see me? Where are you?" Silvermoon was about to go offline when she received a message from this person. Silvermoon glanced at him again and saw that he was still waving his hand while searching the crowd. When her gaze shifted to where she was, she suddenly stopped. Their eyes met, and Silvermoon did not avoid them. Silvermoon stopped waving and walked over. "You're Silvermoon?" the person asked as he walked up to Silvermoon. Silvermoon nodded. Since he had been recognized, he wasn't afraid to see what tricks the other party had up his sleeve. "You don't seem to be in a good situation, do you?" Yi Xiaowu said as she looked around. Many of the passing players cast looks of disdain at Silvermoon. This Silvermoon was really well trained now. It was as if he could not see it, as if no one was around. Of course. If Silvermoon was in a good mood right now, then he would have gone crazy. Right now, he was not even in the mood to pretend to be in a good mood. "I'm here to help you," Yi Xiaowu said. "Oh. What do you plan on doing?" Silvermoon asked calmly. The person who had come for a talk with him had said all sorts of extravagant things, but the real topic was, "First, come out with me." Silvermoon, who had been tricked once, would immediately curse the other party's ancestors the next time he heard these words. At this moment, he was ready to go. As soon as the rookie in front of him said these words, he would immediately greet him. With the current situation, I don't think anyone can openly kill their way out of here, Yi Xiaowu said. Is that so? Silvermoon said. It should be. Silvermoon expressed his doubt. Yi Xiaowu also stopped talking because at this moment, the two of them simultaneously thought of a certain person. Both of them even had an expression of grief and indignation on their faces. No one could kill their way out, but if it was him, then he might not be able to. This is too unfair, Yi Xiaowu thought. Damn it, slut. Silvermoon had prepared a line of curses for all 8 generations of ancestors, so he silently recited it to Gu Fei in his heart. Afterwards, he continued to quietly wait for the other to speak. Yi Xiaowu didn't say anything. He just quietly took out a scroll from his pocket and waved it at Silvermoon. What scroll? Silvermoon couldn't help but ask. A teleportation scroll, Yi Xiaowu replied. Silvermoon was startled, and his brain immediately began to spin. He had never encountered such a method since he was trapped here. Did he mean to set up a trap at the place where the scroll would teleport him to? Damn it, this was definitely that slut Yun Zhongmu. Only he would be willing to spend so much just to kill me. As Silvermoon was thinking, he saw that Yi Xiaowu had already opened the scroll. Look carefully, it's blank. The coordinates haven't been filled in yet. Ah. Silvermoon was startled. I think you should know that if you use a scroll without coordinates, it will teleport you to a random location. Thus, it is impossible to set up an ambush at the teleportation location. Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon was startled. He had indeed heard of this rule. In order to dispel his suspicions, Yi Xiaowu now clearly displayed the scroll in front of him. Silvermoon carefully looked inside and out. It was indeed an extremely clean scroll. Not a single word had been written on it. This time it's real. What had originally been a sliver of hope suddenly became 100%. Silvermoon, who had been calm for a long time, suddenly became excited. He wanted nothing more than to hug this scroll and fiercely cry. If you still don't feel at ease, perhaps you can tell me the coordinates. I'll write it down and then we can teleport together. Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon pondered. But I suggest that you write the coordinates a bit further away. It's best if it's not within Baishur City's range. In this main city, I feel that for you, there could be danger anywhere. As Yi Xiaowu spoke, he looked at the many gazes that were directed at Silvermoon. At this moment, he was negotiating with Silvermoon. These people were also looking at him with a somewhat inexplicable and strange gaze. Not within Baishur City's range. Silvermoon immediately became suspicious. Aren't teleportation scrolls unable to teleport out of the main city's range? Huh? You don't know the rules. If you teleport randomly, you can't leave the main city's range. But if you fill in your own coordinates, then you won't be restricted. Yi Xiaowu explained. Silvermoon really didn't know this rule. It was also because he didn't know that he was suspicious. He was afraid that the guy in front of him was taking advantage of his lack of familiarity with the rules of the teleportation scroll. Once he filled in a location that couldn't be teleported, then the teleportation would fail. Then, if the teleportation failed and he was teleported out of the resurrection point, then it would undoubtedly be a trap that could be controlled. Yi Xiaowu saw Silvermoon's hesitation and smiled. You don't seem to believe me. Then, we'll use the previous method and teleport randomly. But let me remind you, random teleportation is very dangerous. I'm not talking about the possibility of directly teleporting out of this door. Even teleporting to a location that's 1 yard away from your current coordinates is also possible. Or, teleporting to an advanced leveling area with a group of monsters and dying is equivalent to not teleporting. I only have this one teleportation scroll. Can I fill in the coordinates of this main city? Silvermoon said. Of course you can, but I hope you can be sure of the safety of the coordinates you fill in. You don't want to play like this, right? Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon was in pain. He was completely unfamiliar with Baishur City and didn't know how to fill in the coordinates where no one was. With his current reputation in Baishur City, as long as he teleported to a place with people, he would suspect that he would be in danger. As long as the other side shouted, "Look, it's Silvermoon," he could instantly form a hunting squad. No, I can't fill in the coordinates of Baishur City. Silvermoon clenched his teeth. He agreed with Yi Xiaowu's statement that teleporting in Baishur City would only bode ill for him. Teleporting like this, the probability of dying was too high. It seemed that he needed to take a gamble and believe in this guy's explanation of the teleportation rules. Teleport to another main city. Then, I accept your proposal. Silvermoon said. Then, I suggest teleporting to Shady Grove City. Yi Xiaowu said. Shady Grove City. Why Shady Grove City? Silvermoon suddenly became nervous again. He felt that if the initiative wasn't in his hands, then it could be a trap. Brother, you haven't actually asked me why I came to help you. Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon suddenly felt ashamed. He, who had always valued profit over friendship, had actually forgotten to ask the other's intentions in helping him. This was really unbecoming of him. I need the power of the king's sword in your hand. Of course, I don't want this equipment. I just hope that you can come with us to deal with a group of people. As for the name of this group, I think that once you hear it, you won't refuse. Yi Xiaowu said. Child Elite Group. Silvermoon blurted out. Yi Xiaowu nodded. Family. Silvermoon was excited. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You should know the strength of this group, especially the one called Qianli Drunk. Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon nodded again and again. His attitude towards Yi Xiaowu was much more cordial. Brother, have you also been persecuted by them? Persecuted? Your level. Silvermoon said vaguely. He suddenly understood that this cleric in front of him wasn't some newbie. It was just that because he had fought with those guys, he was killed to this level, just like himself. Oh, this has nothing to do with them. It's just that I haven't played much before. I'm in the game now to weaken this Qianli Drunk. Yi Xiaowu said. Oh. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Silvermoon urged. Don't rush. We're still waiting for someone. When the time comes, we'll go together. Yi Xiaowu replied. Chapter 546. Who is it? Silvermoon's sharp nerves suddenly tensed up again. This guy was already in this state, but he still hoped that the situation was under his control. He panicked at the slightest accident. He was really asking for trouble. Relatives. Yi Xiaowu's answer was based on Silvermoon's thoughts, but it made Silvermoon confused. Tell me the coordinates you want first. I know that if I say it, you'll be suspicious again, Yi Xiaowu said. But the coordinates of Forest Shade City. Silvermoon wasn't in Forest Shade City, so how would he know the coordinates there? Do you believe what I said? If you don't, you can ask any of your friends over there, Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon was very depressed. How could he still have friends now? Although there were some old friends in the friend list that he knew in the game and hadn't come into contact with in the parallel world, since he became famous all over the world, no matter who he sent a message to, the other party would reject strangers' messages. Yi Xiaowu also seemed to see Silvermoon's dilemma. After smiling, he said a long string of coordinates. You're not a newbie. I guess you know how large the area of this coordinate span is. You won't suspect that I've set up an ambush in such a large area, right? Yi Xiaowu said. Where? Silvermoon hurriedly said. He immediately picked a coordinate from the span and watched Yi Xiaowu fill it in on the teleportation scroll. But then Silvermoon became suspicious again. Wait, what's this extra number? The map code of Forest Shade City. Let me tell you this. The entire world map of the parallel world is a seamlessly connected complete map, but this is only an illusion in the eyes of the players. With the current capacity of the server, the area of a main city in the parallel world is its limit. So, although the entire map has tens of thousands of coordinates, in fact, the map coordinates that the system recognizes are limited, and it can't tell you how many specific coordinates there are. For example, if the limit coordinate is 2000, then the coordinate 2001 will be further than 2000 in the eyes of the player. However, in the system's calculations, the coordinate 2001 doesn't exist. At this time, the system will recognize the coordinate as 1, and the coordinate will cycle in units of 2000. The reason why there was no repetition was because every map had a code. As long as this code was added, the system's coordinate calculation would not go wrong. The group of extra numbers you see now is the code of Forest Shade City. If you don't write this group of codes, the system will default to the code of the current map when teleporting. That is to say, the coordinates of Forest Shade City are filled in, but in fact, they will arrive at a certain coordinate of Baishur City after the law of circulation. Do you understand? Silvermoon's jaw dropped. I've never heard of any laws, and I've never heard of a map code. According to what you're saying, if you don't know this code, then it's impossible to use the scroll to teleport between cities? Yi Xiaowu shook his head. It seems that you really haven't used a teleportation scroll. Generally, when players teleport between major cities, they take the scroll to the location they need to teleport to and record the coordinates. This way, the system will store the map code as hidden data in the scroll. After that, no matter where you use it to teleport, you will naturally enter the calculation of the coordinates of the map. And you know what this code is, so you don't need to use it this way. That's right. Who the hell are you? Silvermoon was shocked. This guy had just said a lot of nonsense about the map coordinates. He had never heard of something like this, but the guy in front of him seemed to know it very well. Silvermoon had already faintly felt that he was not ordinary. I'm just a person who knows the game better than you, Yi Xiaowu replied. You're someone from the game. After all, Silvermoon was not stupid. The things that this guy in front of him knew were very technical. Obviously, it was not the kind of rule summary that ordinary players discovered through practice. Yi Xiaowu did not answer his question. He just put the scroll in front of him and said, look carefully. The one in front is the map code of Forest Shade City. The coordinates behind are the ones that you just chose. Silvermoon knew that he was changing the topic, so he did not insist on asking. After looking at the coordinates again, he suddenly said, then why hasn't the person we're waiting for come yet? Silvermoon was anxious again. If they didn't come for a long time, what if they arranged an ambush at this coordinate? Could it be that this person was a decoy? Deliberately stalling for time? Was this guy's big pile of things real or fake? Silvermoon's head was about to bleed when he heard the guy say, he's here. Silvermoon looked in the direction he was looking at. A person walked in from the gate of the night camp. Silvermoon looked at this person and was shocked. It's you. The person clearly saw Silvermoon, but his eyes quickly turned to Yi Xiaowu who was beside him. You guys. Silvermoon took 2 steps back and pulled away from Yi Xiaowu. This was because he had seen this person who had just come in. It was a thief who had besieged him with Yun Zhongmu. He had done his best to run naked and spray saliva. Oh. You guys know each other. Although Yi Xiaowu was aware of Silvermoon's situation, he didn't know much about Silvermoon's enemies in such a short time. You guys are together. Silvermoon said hatefully. The new thief looked at Yi Xiaowu as if waiting for his reply. Yi Xiaowu looked at the two of them. Do you guys have a grudge? The thief looked at Silvermoon. I'm just doing things for the guild. Silvermoon furrowed her brows. From the looks of it, this guy seemed to have been invited by the priest just like her. But why would it be him? Was this person some kind of extraordinary person? Silvermoon basically recognized all of the experts in Cloud Zhonghua's group, but she had never seen this person before. Silvermoon had always treated him as a small fry, but because this fella had always been at the front lines when they were ganged up on the last few times, Silvermoon remembered his face. The reason I invited you two is actually the same. Yi Xiaowu said. Silvermoon's heart moved. You have a grudge with the child elite group. Logically speaking, Yun Zhongmu's people shouldn't have a grudge with them. Silvermoon felt that this was strange. I'm called Non-Smiler. The thief replied. Silvermoon immediately understood. This motherfucker was also a scum. He was the first person that Qianli had killed in a drunken stupor. Moreover, when he had been killed, Qianli hadn't revealed himself and was still wearing his 27,149 avatar. Speaking of which, if this guy hadn't been killed, Qianli wouldn't have run to Moonlit Night City. If that scourge hadn't run to Moonlit Night City, Silvermoon wouldn't have fallen to such a sad state. When she thought of this, Silvermoon suddenly wanted to fiercely punch him. Alright, I think we should first leave this place and then talk. Yi Xiaowu discovered that as Non-Smiler came into contact with the two of them, more and more doubtful gazes were directed at them. How do we leave? Non-Smiler asked. As someone who had participated in killing Silvermoon, he was even more clear on how desperate the ambush outside was. Teleport. You two stand over here. Yi Xiaowu opened a teleport scroll. Of course, Non-Smiler didn't have any concerns and immediately walked over. Silvermoon was secretive and hesitant, but in the end, he made up his mind. He had gambled so many times, it wouldn't make a difference this time. He gritted his teeth and stood over. The scroll fell to the ground, and the white light of the teleport formation instantly carved rune lines on the ground. Many players with slow reactions didn't realize what had happened. A white pillar of light rose up, and the three people who had just been there disappeared. Many players who were hiding in the dark, climbing houses, and crouching in corners had been paying attention to Silvermoon. At this time, when he suddenly disappeared, everyone came out from the dark and gathered together, looking at each other. This is a teleport scroll. In this day and age, there were more and more players who knew what was good. Which bro is this from? So much money. Someone looked around and asked. That's right. Is that bitch worth so much money? Someone said that teleport scrolls were still rare and expensive. In the end, after the representatives of the various groups who were lying in ambush outside the resurrection point expressed their opinions, everyone finally realized that no one had used such an amazing plan as a teleport scroll. After all, ganging up on Silvermoon was an activity that everyone loved to see, and there was no need to hide it to entertain themselves. Generally, the groups who got the opportunity would be jubilant, but at this time, no one came out to admit it. Could it be that someone saved that guy? Someone said. Fuck, it can't be. This kind of scum is actually saved. Who's so shameless? Someone was angry. Did anyone notice who that guy was? Someone shouted. It's a cleric. I don't know him. I thought it was one of you. I thought it was one of you. I thought it was one of you, that thief later, isn't that person yours? Someone pointed at the people from the 10 Guild Alliance. After muddling around here for so many days, everyone was familiar with each other and knew the origins of this group of people. For them to specially travel thousands of miles to Whitestone City to kill a single person, everyone was very impressed. The people from the 10 Guild Alliance looked at each other. After all, there were many battles to be fought in Moonlit Night City. As the big boss of the 10 Guild Alliance, Yun Jongmu could not stay here and play with Silvermoon all day long. Fortunately, there were still many people in their group who were enthusiastic about killing Silvermoon. Comrade Zhu Xian, who was the leader for the past 2 days, had been bullied by Silvermoon and his group a long time ago. Now that Silvermoon was in such a dire state, he was very happy to come and beat her up. Who would have thought that within 2 days of being in charge, this would happen? Old Yun, Silvermoon has been saved. Zhu Xian quickly sent a message to Yun Zhongmu. Fuck, you son of a bitch, how can you let someone run away when it's your turn? Can't you be more mature? Yun Zhongmu cursed. There's no other way. Someone came with a teleport scroll and teleported him away. Zhu Xian said. Fuck, which son of a bitch would spend so much money to save this bitch? Yun Zhongmu was shocked. Not only that. Non-Smiler was also teleported away with them. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.